Ontological argument reimagined. Hey, have you ever wondered if you could actually prove that something exists just by thinking about it? Sounds crazy, right? I mean, usually to prove something exists, you have to see it, touch it, or measure it somehow. But what if I told you that centuries ago, some philosophers tried to do exactly that with God? Yeah, using nothing but logic and thinking. So let's dive in. There's this mind-bending idea called the ontological argument. It starts super simple. God is defined as the greatest possible being, basically the ultimate, perfect, max-level existence. Now here's the twist. Imagine if God existed only in our imagination. Okay, picture that. God is this perfect being, but only in your head. Wait a minute. If God is truly the greatest possible being, would not existing only in imagination be kind of less than perfect? Because then, in reality, God wouldn't exist. And if something could be greater than God by existing in reality, then the God you imagined wouldn't actually be the greatest. Boom. Logic says if God is truly the greatest, God must exist in reality. I know, it sounds like a brain teaser straight out of a philosophy class, but stick with me. Here's where it gets even crazier. Philosophers like Gottfried Leibniz and more recently Kurt Gödel took this idea and supercharged it using something called modal logic. Don't freak out, it's just a fancy way of talking about possible worlds. Think of it like alternate realities or parallel universes. In some possible reality, God exists. Okay, follow this. If God exists in any possible reality, then God must exist in every reality, including ours. Wild, right? It's like saying if this ultimate thing can exist anywhere, it has to exist everywhere. Logic doesn't lie. Let's make it even more relatable. Imagine you're dreaming about the perfect pizza. Not just any pizza, this is pizza perfection. Perfect crust, perfect cheese, perfect toppings. Now, think about it. If you can imagine this ultimate pizza, wouldn't it be kind of weird if it didn't exist anywhere in reality? If it's truly perfect, wouldn't logic say it exists somewhere? Philosophers use this same type of reasoning for God, just on a much bigger cosmic scale. What's fascinating about this argument is that it doesn't rely on experiments, evidence, or even the physical universe. You don't need telescopes, labs, or fossils. All you need is your brain, your imagination, and a little bit of logical thinking. That's the mind-blowing part. Imagine proving the existence of something as enormous as God without lifting a single finger in the real world. And here's a little challenge for you while we're on this topic. Try to imagine a being greater than the greatest being you can imagine. Go ahead, I'll wait. Can you even picture it? Most people can't. That's exactly the point the philosophers are making. By defining God as the ultimate possible being, logic itself seems to force the idea that God exists. Of course, not everyone is convinced. Critics have argued that just defining something into existence sounds sneaky. But whether you agree or not, the ontological argument is still one of the most fascinating brain-twisting ways that human logic has tried to tackle the biggest question of all: does God exist? And the best part, you don't need to be a genius or a scholar to play with this idea. You just need to let your mind wander and follow the logic wherever it leads. So the next time someone tells you that thinking alone can't prove anything, just remember, centuries of philosophers have spent their lives trying to prove God exists, using nothing but pure thought. That's not just deep, it's mind-blowing. Principle of sufficient reason. Hey, have you ever stopped and just stared into the void and thought, why does anything exist at all? Not just your room or your phone or even the coffee you spilled this morning, but literally everything, the entire universe. Sounds like a crazy question, right? But that's exactly the kind of question philosophers love to chew on. And there's this mind-blowing idea called the principle of sufficient reason that tries to tackle it. So what's the principle of sufficient reason, or PSR, if you want to sound fancy at parties? Simple. Everything that exists, happens, or is the case must have a reason or explanation. Nothing just randomly pops into existence. Nothing. Your phone didn't just appear on your desk because the universe fancied it. The plants don't grow because they felt like it. Even that loud thump you just heard probably has a cause. Logic, common sense, and science all agree. Everything has a reason. Now hold that thought, and let's zoom out. Forget the phone, forget the plants, forget the thump. Let's talk about everything. The entire universe. Yep, all the galaxies, stars, black holes, even you and me. If everything inside the universe has a reason, then what about the universe itself? Does it just exist for no reason? Can something so massive, so complex just exist out of nowhere? That's where the logic gets wild. Philosophers like Leibniz and Spinoza thought about this and said, if everything has a reason, then the universe itself must have a cause too. But here's the catch. If you keep tracing causes backward, you can't go on forever. There has to be a first cause, something that exists by itself, something that doesn't need a reason. Otherwise, you end up in an endless chain of because of that, because of that, because of that, which never really explains anything. Think of it like a line of dominoes. Each domino falls because the one before it pushed it. But what pushed the first domino? If there's no first push, the whole chain makes no sense. Logic says you need something outside the chain, a hand, a spark, a first mover. Philosophers call this the uncaused cause. Some call it God. And this isn't just abstract philosophy. It's kind of irresistible logic. Because every single thing we see inside the universe has a reason. From why the Earth orbits the sun to why electrons stick to atoms, causes and explanations are everywhere. So when we ask about the reason for the universe itself, the PSR nudges us towards something that doesn't need a reason, something necessary and eternal. Mind-bending, right? And here's a fun twist. This isn't asking if God is nice or if God likes pizza or if God will give you a promotion. Nope, this is pure logic. It's like a cosmic detective story where the universe itself is a clue and logic is the magnifying glass. It asks, if everything has a reason, what's the ultimate reason? You can feel your brain stretching just thinking about it. So take a minute and imagine this. The universe, with all its galaxies, particles, laws, and chaos, might actually point to a reason beyond itself. Something that doesn't need explaining, something eternal, necessary, and self-existent. That's the first cause, the spark that lights up everything else. Some call it God. Some just call it the ultimate reason. But whatever you give it, logic makes it feel unavoidable. Next time someone says, "Why are you asking these impossible questions?" just smile and say, "I'm following logic." Because when you really follow it, the universe itself seems to demand an explanation, a starting point that doesn't have a cause, a foundation that is unshakable. And that, my friends, is one of the most fascinating, mind-stretching ideas you can wrap your head around. Logic alone, without experiments or fancy gadgets, points towards something eternal, something necessary, something, well, bigger than the universe itself. And if you let your imagination wander, it's a journey that makes your brain feel both tiny and gigantic at the same time.
Transcendental argument for God. Hey, quick question.
Have you ever paused for a second and thought, why does logic even work? I mean, why is it that 2 plus 2 always equals 4 no matter where you are, or that cause and effect reliably happen in the world? You wake up in the morning, pour your coffee, and boom, your reasoning seems to make sense. But why? What's the foundation beneath it all? That's where something called the transcendental argument for God, or the TAG for short, comes in. And trust me, it's a wild, mind-bending way to think about God. Here's the core idea in plain language. Logic itself needs a foundation. That's right, you can't just have rules of reasoning floating in the air. Statements like the universe exists or gravity pulls things down are only meaningful if there's some grounding that makes truth possible. Think of logic like a building. You can pile bricks all you want, but without a foundation, the building collapses. TAG asks, what's the foundation for truth and reason itself? Now, the argument goes a step further and says, the only thing that can adequately ground logic, reason, and truth is something eternal, self-existent, and perfectly rational. In other words, God. Think about it. If reasoning works, if truth exists, if logic isn't just random gibberish, there must be a source that makes that possible. Without that source, reasoning itself loses meaning. Crazy, right? Let's make it more relatable. Imagine a computer. You know how a computer runs programs, right? Well, programs can't just magically execute on their own. They need an operating system. Logic is like a program. It needs something to run on. TAG says the universe's operating system is God, the foundation that allows reasoning, truth, and communication to exist at all. Without it, our thoughts, math, and even language wouldn't make any sense. Here is another example. Everyday math. You split a pizza into 4 slices. Fractions obey rules. 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1. That's fine at a pizza party, but where do those rules come from? Not from the pizza itself. The rules of logic and math exist independently of physical objects. And if rules exist independently, logic nudges us towards something that explains those rules, a mind capable of upholding truth, order, and consistency. Now, think about a world where logic doesn't exist. Try to imagine it. What would it mean to say 2 plus 2 equals 4 if there were no rules, no cause and effect, no reason at all? Could you even communicate? Could you even think? It seems impossible. The very act of reasoning points to a grounding beyond randomness, beyond chaos, something necessary that makes reasoning possible. And that's the beauty of TAG. It doesn't rely on telescopes, particle accelerators, or even physical evidence. It's about reason itself. It's saying, if logic works, if truth exists, if your mind can make sense of the universe, then there's something deeper making that possible. That something is what philosophers and theologians identify as God. Even if you're skeptical, this argument has a subtle power. You can doubt the existence of God all you want, but the fact that logic works at all, that your brain can follow cause and effect, that you can watch this video and understand what I'm saying, is a clue you can't just ignore. Logic needs a foundation, and something eternal seems to fit that role perfectly. So next time you do a little mental math, reason through a problem, or even argue with a friend, pause for a second. The very act of reasoning is a tiny window into something mind-blowing, the possibility of a foundation that transcends the universe itself, a foundation that makes truth possible. That foundation? Some call it God. Some call it the ultimate source of all logic. Either way, it's utterly fascinating. And it makes you realize that even the simplest thoughts might be pointing to something eternal, necessary, and beyond comprehension.
Gödel's ontological proof. Okay, here's a fun one for you. Did you know one of the smartest mathematicians in history actually tried to prove God exists using math? Yep, I'm serious. His name was Kurt Gödel, a guy so brilliant that he literally shook up the foundations of mathematics with his incompleteness theorems. But alongside all that, he had a side obsession: logic, philosophy, and, believe it or not, God. And what he came up with is called Gödel's ontological proof, a mind-bending attempt to show that God's existence can be deduced purely through logic. So let's break it down in simple terms. Gödel's goal was audacious. He wanted a formal, step-by-step logical proof that a maximally great being, basically God, must exist. And when I say formal, I mean pure math and logic. No telescopes, no lab experiments, no prayer required. Just symbols, rules, and reasoning. Mind blown yet? Here's the idea in plain English. Imagine the ultimate being, a being so great that nothing greater can exist. Not only powerful, but morally perfect, infinitely wise, and existent in all possible ways. Now, if it's possible for such a being to exist, logic says it exists in at least one possible world. And here's the kicker. If it exists in one possible world, logic demands that it exists in every possible world. Translation? That being must exist here in our reality too. That's the essence of Gödel's proof, using the rules of logic to argue that God isn't just a concept, but a necessary being woven into the fabric of possibility itself. Okay, let's make this relatable. Think about superheroes. Imagine the most perfect superhero ever. The strongest, the smartest, the fastest, the kindest. You can picture them in your head, right? Now, here's the trick. If it's logically possible for this perfect superhero to exist, then in some sense they exist somewhere, maybe even everywhere. Gödel basically applied this kind of reasoning to God. Instead of superheroes, he talked about a being with maximum greatness in every possible way. And if that being is logically possible, it can't not exist. Wild, right? Now, you might be thinking, wait, is this real? Can math really prove God? And here's the thing. Critics debate whether Gödel's proof truly convinces anyone. Some say it's just clever symbolism. But that's not the fascinating part. The crazy part is that logic and math, fields we usually think of as cold and precise, can even touch on questions about God. That's the mind-bending leap Gödel attempted. Let's pause and reflect. Try to imagine a being so perfect that nothing greater could exist. Can you picture it? And now imagine using logic itself, the same logic you use to do puzzles or play chess, to argue that this being must exist. No magic, no miracles, just pure reason. That's what Gödel dared to do. And here's a fun twist. Even if you're skeptical, Gödel's proof forces you to think differently about logic. It's no longer just a tool for solving equations or building acts. It becomes a window into questions about reality, perfection, and existence itself. Logic suddenly feels alive, pointing towards something enormous, necessary, and mind-bendingly beyond ourselves. So next time someone tells you math is dry or boring, just remember, one of the greatest mathematicians of all time tried to use it to prove God exists. He combined philosophy, logic, and imagination in a way that makes you realize how powerful human reasoning can be. And whether you buy the proof or not, the very fact that someone attempted it with mathematics alone is, well, jaw-droppingly incredible. Gödel's ontological proof isn't just a logical puzzle. It's an invitation to see the universe through a lens where logic, perfection, and existence collide, and where God isn't just a concept, but a necessary being woven into the fabric of possibility itself.
Leibniz's cosmological twist. All right, let's take a trip into one of the deepest, most mind-bending questions humans have ever asked. Why is there something instead of nothing? I mean, pause for a second. Everything you see, feel, or even imagine, all of reality exists. And yet there's always that nagging question. Why? Why is there anything at all? Not just your coffee mug or your cat or the sun rising tomorrow, but the entire universe. Philosophers have been obsessing over this for centuries, and one of the most fascinating takes comes from a 17th century genius named Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Now, most people stop at the basic question, why is there something instead of nothing? That's already heavy enough to fry your brain. But Leibniz didn't stop there. Oh no, he took it to a whole new level. He said, it's not enough to just ask why something exists. We need a sufficient reason for why it exists and why it exists in the way it does. In other words, there must be an explanation for everything. Not just a half-baked answer, but a fully satisfying one. That's the heart of what he called the principle of sufficient reason. To make it a bit more relatable, think of reading a mystery novel. If characters in the story were just moving around randomly with no motivation or reason, it would feel frustrating, right? Nothing would make sense. Leibniz is saying the universe is like that story. Everything happening around us, from the orbits of planets to the firing of neurons in your brain, needs a reason. And the story only makes sense if there's a deeper explanation behind it all. Or imagine seeing a perfectly crafted clock. You don't just ask, what time does it show? You want to know who built it, why it was built, why it works the way it does. You want the reason behind the design. Leibniz is essentially applying that level of curiosity to the entire cosmos. Every star, planet, and particle exists for a reason, and logic urges us to find that reason. Here's where it gets really interesting. If you trace all those reasons back, eventually you hit a wall. You can't just keep asking why forever, because you'd fall into an infinite regress of explanations. There has to be something that exists for its own reason, something that doesn't depend on anything else for its existence. That ultimate explanation, Leibniz argued, is what people call God. This being isn't just powerful or intelligent, it's necessary, meaning it exists by its own nature, and without it, nothing else would make sense. Let's do a quick thought experiment. Picture tracing everything in the universe back to its reason. The stars. Why do they exist? Gravity. Why does it follow the laws it does? Your breakfast. Why is it here? Your very thoughts. Why do they happen? Keep going back and logic gently nudges you toward a first cause, something necessary that explains everything else. It's like peeling an onion of reality, and at the very core, there's something eternal and foundational. What's fascinating about Leibniz's twist is that it doesn't rely on science or faith alone. You don't need telescopes or test tubes. You just need logic, curiosity, and a willingness to follow reasoning wherever it leads. The universe isn't just a random accident. It's a puzzle with an explanation. And according to Leibniz, that explanation is something necessary, eternal, and ultimately perfect. And here's the kicker. Thinking about this doesn't just make you ponder God, it changes the way you see reality. Every particle, every law of nature, every moment of existence suddenly feels connected, purposeful, and meaningful. Leibniz's argument turns the universe itself into a kind of cosmic mystery novel, where the ultimate solution is this first, necessary reason, something that makes all other existence possible. So next time you look up at the stars, or think about your own existence, remember Leibniz's cosmological twist. The question isn't just, why is there something instead of nothing? The deeper, mind-blowing question is, why is there a sufficient reason for everything? And when you follow the logic all the way through, you end up facing the ultimate explanation, something that in every way points toward God.
Necessary versus contingent beings. All right, let's take a deep dive into one of the most mind-bending concepts in philosophy, the difference between necessary beings and contingent beings. Sounds fancy, right? But don't worry, we'll keep it simple, and by the end, you might just see the universe in a whole new way. So, have you ever wondered why anything exists at all? Not just your phone, your cat, or the sun, but everything. The entire universe itself. And while you're thinking about that, notice something. Some things could easily not exist, while others, well, they can't not exist. That's the heart of necessary versus contingent beings. Let's start with contingent beings. These are things that depend on something else for their existence. They could possibly not exist. Your cat? Totally contingent. If your parents hadn't adopted it, it wouldn't exist. Your coffee mug? Contingent. The sun? Also contingent. All of these things are dependent, meaning their existence relies on something else. And in theory, they could fail to exist. They're not self-explanatory. They need a reason outside themselves to exist. Now, contrast that with necessary beings. These are things that must exist by their nature. They can't not exist. Their existence is self-explanatory.
They depend on nothing else. Think of it like the foundation of a building, the base that everything else rests on. Without it, the building collapses. A necessary being exists on its own by definition. It's eternal, self-sufficient, and foundational. Here's where it gets really interesting. The universe itself seems contingent. Everything inside it, planets, stars, galaxies, even the laws of physics, depend on something else. They're all connected in a web of dependencies. Nothing in the universe exists necessarily on its own. That raises a big question. If everything we see is contingent, what explains the existence of the universe itself? You can't just have an infinite chain of contingent things forever. It wouldn't actually explain anything. Logic demands a necessary being to anchor it all. Now, let's make it more relatable. Imagine a long line of dominoes. Each domino falls because the one before it pushed it. But what about the very first domino? There has to be one that exists on its own. Otherwise, the whole chain of falling dominoes doesn't make sense. That first domino is like a necessary being. It exists independently and allows the rest of the chain to exist. Without it, there's no explanation for why the dominoes are falling in the first place. Or think about a building. A building relies on bricks, which rely on cement, which rely on factories, which rely on… You see where this is going. Eventually, you hit a point where you need a foundation that exists independently. Otherwise, the entire structure is unexplained chaos. Philosophers like Aquinas and Leibniz took this reasoning seriously. They argued that logic itself nudges us toward a necessary being, something whose existence doesn't depend on anything else. This being provides the ultimate explanation for everything else that exists. In other words, if you follow the chain of contingency all the way back, logic points to something eternal, self-existent, and foundational. Some call this God. Here's a thought experiment for you. Picture the universe as a giant web of dependencies. Every star, planet, particle, and thought is a thread in that web. Now ask yourself, can the web exist without an anchor? Can all these contingent things support themselves without something necessary holding it all together? Logic says no. There must be a thread that anchors it all, a necessary being that explains everything else. The mind-blowing part is that this isn't just abstract philosophy. It's deeply intuitive. When you look at the universe, notice the dependencies all around. Everything points beyond itself, towards something that exists necessarily, independent of anything else. That's what necessary versus contingent beings is really about. Logic showing that the universe itself seems to demand a foundation, a being whose existence is self-explanatory, eternal, and ultimately real. So, next time you're staring at the stars, thinking about your life, or even contemplating your own existence, remember this. Everything you see might depend on something else. But somewhere, logic suggests there is something that depends on nothing. Something necessary. Something foundational. And that, my friends, is where philosophy, reason, and logic converge to point us toward the ultimate explanation for reality itself. The ground of being. All right, let's dive into a truly mind-stretching idea. The concept of the ground of being. Sounds fancy, I know, but stick with me. It's one of those concepts that makes you look at existence in a completely new way. So, have you ever stopped and thought about what it really means for anything to exist at all? Not just your cat, your coffee cup, or the stars in the sky, but existence itself. Why is there being at all? That's exactly the question a 20th century philosopher named Martin Heidegger obsessed over. Heidegger wasn't asking about physics or chemistry or even religion. He wasn't trying to explain planets or electrons. He was asking the much bigger question, what does it mean for anything to exist at all? He wanted to understand being itself, the very act of existence, the foundation that makes everything real. Think about it this way. A chair exists. Your cat exists. The sun exists. Easy, right? But why does existence itself exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? Heidegger called the answer, or rather the grounding, the ground of being. It's not a thing you can touch or see. It's not a star, a particle, or a galaxy. It's the source that makes all existence possible. To make it more relatable, imagine all the devices in your house. Your phone, your laptop, your fridge. They all work, right? But why? Because there's a power supply behind them. Electricity flows, powering every device. Existence itself is kind of like that electricity. It powers everything in reality, but it isn't any single object in the world. Without that electricity, nothing would exist. That's the ground of being, the ultimate power behind all that exists. Or picture a stage play. You have actors, props, scripts, but nothing would appear without the stage lights. Without illumination, all those actors are invisible. The play is meaningless. The story can't happen. Heidegger is saying that being is like those lights. It makes everything visible, possible, and real. Without being itself, nothing could show up in reality. Now, here's the mind-blowing part. If everything we see depends on being itself, then logic starts nudging us toward a bigger truth. There has to be a source beyond physical reality, something eternal, necessary, and foundational. Something that doesn't just exist in space and time, but makes space and time, objects and laws, even thought itself possible. It's like the ultimate anchor behind reality. Try imagining it for a second. A universe without being. Not empty space, not a void, but existence itself, vanishing. Weird to think about, right? We can imagine the universe without stars or planets, but can we imagine existence itself disappearing? It's almost impossible. That's because being is the ground, the foundation, the thing that allows all things to appear, to exist, to be real. Some philosophers say that this ground of being is just another way of pointing toward God, the ultimate reality that makes everything else possible. Whether you call it God, the necessary being, or pure existence, the idea is the same. Something must exist that underpins all existence, something beyond the physical universe, something eternal, something. But what's fascinating about Heidegger's perspective is that it flips the way we usually think about reality. We don't just look at objects, planets, or atoms. We start thinking about existence itself, the invisible, ungraspable foundation that makes everything else possible. And when you start looking at the universe this way, you realize it's not just random stuff floating around. There's a logic, a power, a source behind it all, quietly making everything exist. So next time you gaze at the night sky, or even just glance at your coffee cup, don't stop there. Think bigger. Think about existence itself. And imagine, just imagine, that all of it, everything you see, is resting on a foundation beyond the physical, beyond time, beyond comprehension. That's the ground of being, and it's a perspective that can completely change the way you see reality itself.
Logical paradox of infinity. All right, let's talk about something that's guaranteed to twist your brain in the best possible way. Infinity. I mean, seriously, have you ever sat down and really thought about infinity? Not just a really big number, but something that literally never ends. Numbers you can't count to, space you can't cross, time that doesn't stop. Infinity is one of those concepts that feels abstract until you realize it might point to something beyond the physical world. So, first things first. Infinity isn't just a super big number, like a trillion or a Google. Infinity is the idea that you can keep going forever. Count 1, 2, 3. You'll never reach infinity. Add 1 to infinity, and it's still infinity. And here's where it gets wild. Some infinities are actually bigger than other infinities. Mind-bending, right? How can something infinite be bigger than something that's also infinite? That's where math and logic start doing the weird magical stuff that our everyday brains can't fully wrap around. Let me give you a super relatable example. Hilbert's Hotel. Imagine a hotel with infinite rooms, and every single room is already full. You might think, okay, no vacancy, no room for new guests. But wait. This hotel is infinite. The manager simply moves every guest from room 1 to room 2, room 2 to room 3, and so on. Suddenly, room 1 is free for a new guest. Even though the hotel was full, there's room for more. If that blows your mind, you're not alone. Infinity doesn't behave like anything in the real world. It's logical, yet impossible to physically experience. And that's exactly the point. Infinity doesn't exist in the physical universe. There's no infinite matter, no infinite energy, no infinite objects. Everything around us is finite. Even the universe, as far as we know, is bound by space and time. Yet the concept of infinity exists in logic and mathematics, and it works perfectly. You can reason about it, prove things with it, and use it to solve problems that have nothing to do with physical objects. That alone is fascinating. Logic seems to operate in a space that goes beyond the material world. Now, here's where it gets philosophical and theological. Some thinkers have long argued that infinity hints at God. Think about it. If there's something eternal, unbounded, and limitless, it can't be found in the finite, contingent universe we live in. Infinity points toward a source that exists beyond all limits, a reality that isn't constrained by space, time, or matter. It's eternal, perfect, and fundamentally different from the world we see. qualities people often attribute to God. Let's make it more personal. Close your eyes and try to imagine infinity. You can't count on it. You can't measure it. You can't experience it fully. But you can think about it. You can reason about it. And in doing so, your mind is brushing against something that transcends the physical universe. Logic is letting you peek at something that doesn't have a beginning or an end. That's powerful. The paradox of infinity also gives you a sense of awe. Infinity isn't just a number on paper. It's a concept that stretches our minds, challenges our intuitions, and makes us realize that the universe might not be the ultimate reality. There could be something beyond, something eternal, limitless, and necessary. Philosophers, mathematicians, and theologians alike have used this very idea to argue that the infinite implies a source beyond our finite reality. And what do we call that source? Some call it God. So next time you're counting stars, scrolling through huge numbers, or just contemplating time and space, think about infinity. It's not just a weird mathematical trick. It's a clue, a hint that existence itself might have an eternal, unbounded foundation, something that goes beyond what we can touch, see, or fully comprehend. And that, my friends, is one of the most fascinating ways logic nudges us toward the idea of God. Metaphysical realism argument. All right, let's dive into a question that might feel a little abstract at first, but stick with me, because it touches the very foundation of reality, morality, and even logic itself. Here's the question. Do you believe there's such a thing as objective truth or objective right and wrong? I mean, think about it. Are some things true no matter what anyone thinks? And are some things morally wrong or right regardless of culture, opinion, or belief? This is the territory of something philosophers call metaphysical realism. Fancy term, I know, but the idea is pretty straightforward. Metaphysical realism says that certain truths exist independently of human minds. They don't care what you or I think. They are real, fixed, and unchanging. The laws of mathematics, objective truth, 2 + 2 = 4, doesn't care if you like it or not. That's not up for debate. It's true in every possible world. Now take morality. Some moral principles seem just as fixed. Torturing innocent people for fun? That's objectively wrong no matter what anyone believes. Lying to hurt others? Still wrong. This isn't just a cultural preference or a social convention. Philosophers argue that moral facts exist independently, and we recognize them through reason and conscience. Here's the tricky part. Naturalism. The idea that everything arises purely from the physical world, from matter, energy, and chance, struggles to explain these fixed truths. Think about it. If the universe is just atoms bouncing around, why should 2 + 2 = 4 be true? Why should torturing an innocent person be wrong? If everything is just random interactions of matter, where do these eternal truths come from? Let's make it more relatable. Imagine math. 2 + 2 = 4. It's true whether you believe it, whether your culture teaches it, or whether the universe even exists. Math is fixed. Now imagine morality. Even if everyone in the world agreed that it was fine to harm someone for fun, that wouldn't suddenly make it morally right. Moral facts, like mathematical truths, exist independently of opinions. This is where logic nudges us toward something bigger.
If there are truths, especially objective moral truths that exist independently, they must have a grounding. They can't just float in a universe of atoms and energy. There has to be a source, a foundation that is eternal, perfect, and unchanging, something that gives logic and morality their reality. Many philosophers say this foundation is what people call God. Not necessarily the deity you imagine from stories, but a necessary, eternal being that grounds objective truth and morality, making them real rather than arbitrary. Without such a foundation, truth and morality lose their oomph. They'd just be opinions, or social conventions with no real authority. Let's pause and reflect for a second. Think about your own sense of right and wrong. You don't decide it arbitrarily. It feels real, binding, and universal. That sense, that intuition, might be pointing beyond natural explanations. Logic and reason suggest there's a reality behind our reality, a foundation for truth, morality, and meaning. And that's exactly what the metaphysical realism argument is about. So next time someone tells you morals are just social contracts or truth is whatever you believe, remember this. Objective truth and moral facts exist, and they require a grounding beyond naturalism, something eternal, something unchanging, something that makes reality itself coherent. And for many thinkers throughout history, that grounding is God. Metaphysical realism doesn't just make you think about abstract philosophy. It makes you reconsider the universe, your sense of right and wrong, and the very structure of reality. It's logic, morality, and existence all pointing towards something beyond the physical, something ultimate, necessary, and real. Something many call God.
The problem of non-existence. All right, let's dive into a question that will twist your mind in the best possible way. Why is there something instead of nothing? I know, this sounds like one of those philosopher's riddles that make your head spin, but stick with me because it's actually one of the most fundamental arguments for the existence of a prime cause, or as many call it, God. First, let's start with a weird but simple idea. From a purely logical standpoint, nothingness is possible. That's right, it could have been that nothing existed. No stars, no planets, no atoms, no time, no space. Complete emptiness. Zero. Nada. The universe, reality, even you. You could have simply never existed. And yet, here we are. Something exists. The universe exists. You exist. That's the paradox. If nothingness was a real possibility, why did something win out? Let's make it a little more relatable. Imagine a coin flip. Heads is existence. Tails is nothingness. Somehow, existence came up heads. But what caused it to land that way? Why didn't nothingness take the win? Or picture an empty room. It could stay empty forever. Yet suddenly a chair appears. Where did it come from? What explains the shift from nothing to something? Logic says there has to be a reason. Something that made the transition possible. Something that caused existence itself. Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. The fact that something exists at all, out of a logical possibility of nothing, points us toward what philosophers call a prime cause.
Think of it like tracing a chain of dominoes. You keep asking, why does this domino fall? And why did that domino fall? Eventually, you can't keep going back infinitely. There has to be a first domino that exists on its own, that sets everything else in motion. That's the prime cause, a being or reality that exists necessarily, independent of anything else, and gives rise to all that exists. This isn't just abstract thinking. It's deeply intuitive. When you look around, it's impossible not to notice that everything depends on something else. Stars depend on gravity and nuclear fusion. Life depends on stars. You depend on your parents. And the universe itself, it depends on something beyond itself to exist at all. That something is what logic nudges us toward, a necessary being, eternal and self-existent, that explains why there is something rather than nothing. And here's the mind-blowing part. You don't need science or religion to see this. You just need logic and curiosity. Step back from the messiness of atoms, planets, and galaxies and ask the simple question, why is there anything at all? Once you do, the answer seems to demand something beyond our physical universe, something eternal, necessary, and uncaused. Many thinkers throughout history have pointed out that this is exactly what people mean when they talk about God. Now, let's make it even more personal. Next time you're sitting alone, looking up at the night sky, or thinking about your own life, consider this. The mere fact that you exist is a clue that points beyond the random chaos of matter and energy. Something had to set existence into motion. Something had to make it possible for anything at all to exist. That something is the ultimate explanation, the necessary source that underpins all reality. So here's the takeaway. Existence isn't trivial. It's not random. The fact that anything exists at all, rather than complete nothingness, points us logically toward a first cause, a necessary being, something eternal and foundational. And that, in the eyes of many philosophers, is God. It's a concept that's both simple and mind-blowing. Simple because it just asks, why is there something instead of nothing? Mind-blowing because when you really think about it, the answer seems to demand a reality beyond our universe, beyond space and time, something eternal, self-existent, and ultimate. So, next time you ponder the cosmos, or even just look in the mirror, remember this. The mere fact that you exist is a clue that points beyond the random chaos of matter and energy. Something had to set existence into motion. Something had to make it possible for anything at all to exist. That something is the ultimate explanation, the necessary source that underpins all reality. And that, my friends, is the problem of non-existence in action. A simple yet profound argument that reality itself points toward something ultimate.
Fine-tuning of physical constants. All right, let's talk about something that will make you look at the universe in a completely different way. The fine-tuning of physical constants. Sounds technical. Don't worry. It's actually mind-blowingly simple once you think about it, and it might just make you wonder if the universe is more than random chaos. First, let's break down what we mean by physical constants. These are numbers that determine how the universe behaves. They govern the strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, the speed of light, basically the rules of reality itself. They decide how atoms form, how stars burn, how planets orbit, and even how chemistry and biology work. Without these numbers being just right, life as we know it couldn't exist. Here's the kicker. The universe is incredibly finely tuned. Tiny changes in these constants, and I mean unimaginably tiny, would make life impossible. If gravity were slightly stronger, stars would burn out too fast for life to develop. If it were slightly weaker, planets couldn't hold together. If the electromagnetic force were off by a hair, atoms wouldn't form. Basically, any slight change in these cosmic dials, and poof, no life. Nada, just empty, sterile chaos. Let me make it more relatable. Imagine tuning a radio. If you're even a tiny fraction off the station, all you get is static. Somehow, the universe landed on the exact frequency that allows life. Or picture baking a cake. You follow the recipe perfectly, but if you're off by the tiniest amount of flour or sugar, the whole thing collapses. That's what the universe is like. An unbelievably precise recipe that somehow came out just right. Now here's where philosophy and logic kick in. How do we explain this mind-boggling precision? There are really only a few options. One, it happened by pure chance. But honestly, the odds are astronomically small. So small that it's almost unimaginable. Two, there's design, meaning some intelligence or force said these numbers just right. Or three, perhaps the constants are logically necessary, meaning they couldn't have been otherwise, though that idea is harder to explain. Either way, the fine-tuning points beyond random chaos. Think about it. The odds of gravity, electromagnetism, and nuclear forces all lining up perfectly for life are so tiny that it's almost impossible to imagine it happening without reason. And yet, here we are, in a universe that not only exists, but supports complex life, conscious beings, and the ability to ponder its own existence. That's astounding. Philosophers and scientists call this the fine-tuning argument. It's not just a cool coincidence argument. It's a hint, a clue, a nudge that maybe the universe has a deeper explanation, something beyond random numbers and physics, something either logically necessary or intelligently designed. And for many thinkers, that something is what people call God, the ultimate source of order and life. Here's a fun mental exercise. Imagine all the constants of the universe as knobs on a giant cosmic control panel. Crank one just a little higher, turn another slightly lower, and suddenly life as we know it disappears. The universe is walking a razor's edge of existence. The fact that we are here, reading this, thinking, observing, that alone tells you the universe is set up in a precise way that's astounding. So next time you look at the stars, flip on a light, or just take a breath, remember this. The universe is fine-tuned for life. Tiny tweaks, and none of this would exist. Logic, probability, and sheer observation all hint at something beyond chance. A design, a necessity, a reason for why the universe is exactly the way it is. And that, my friends, is one of the most fascinating arguments that the cosmos itself points to a deeper reality, something ultimate, something foundational, something many call God. It's not just science, it's logic, it's awe, and it's a reminder that when you gaze at the universe, you're not just seeing stars and planets, you're seeing the hints of an ultimate order, an incredibly precise cosmic design, or a logical necessity that underpins all reality. The universe didn't have to support life, but it does. And that fact alone makes you pause, reflect, and maybe even wonder if there's something beyond the physical world that made it all possible.
Cosmic inflation logic. All right, let's dive into something that will make you feel like the universe is almost aware of us. I'm talking about cosmic inflation, the incredible, mind-boggling burst of expansion that happened right after the Big Bang. If you think the universe just casually appeared, you're about to see why that idea might be way too simple. So, cosmic inflation is basically the idea that in the first fractions of a second after the Big Bang, the universe expanded insanely fast, faster than the speed of light. This isn't science fiction, it's a well-supported theory in cosmology. And why did it happen? It smoothed out the universe, set up the cosmic structures, and laid the foundation for galaxies, stars, planets, and life itself. Without this rapid expansion, the universe as we know it wouldn't exist. Here's the wild part. The initial conditions of the universe, that tiny fraction of a second at the very beginning, had to be incredibly precise. I mean, unimaginably precise. If these conditions were off by the tiniest amount, the universe would have collapsed instantly, expanded too quickly, or ended up as a chaotic, lifeless void. Stars wouldn't form, galaxies wouldn't form, planets wouldn't form, no life, no humans, no YouTube videos, nada. Let's make this relatable. Picture trying to balance a pencil on its tip for billions of years. Any slight wobble and it falls. Impossible, right? Yet somehow the universe balanced its pencil just right, and billions of years later, we're here to ponder it. Or imagine buying a single lottery ticket among quadrillions of combinations and winning perfectly. That's the kind of odds we're talking about with the universe's initial setup. Staggering, unbelievable, mind-blowing. So, what does this tell us? Logic kicks in. Something this improbable happening by pure chance is astronomically unlikely. It's like rolling a perfect set of cosmic dice billions of times and getting the exact result needed for life. So what are the possibilities? 1, it happened completely by random luck, but the odds are almost incomprehensible. 2, there's some kind of design or guiding intelligence behind it. 3, perhaps the universe's initial conditions were logically necessary, though that's a harder idea to wrap your head around. Either way, the extreme improbability nudges us to consider that something deeper is at play. Now, here's the reflective part. Think about how tiny changes could have destroyed everything. If the expansion had been slightly faster, matter would have flown apart too quickly for stars to form. Slightly slower, everything collapses. Slightly more or less energy density. Chaos, no galaxies, no life, and yet, somehow, the universe hit the sweet spot. A perfect balance that allowed complexity, life, and consciousness to emerge. Doesn't it feel like more than coincidence? Like there's a hidden logic or intentional setup at work? Philosophers and cosmologists alike point out that this isn't just science. It's a hint, a clue that the universe's beginning isn't random. Something beyond mere chance seems to have set the stage for life, intelligence, and observation. and that something could be interpreted as a mind, a purpose, or a necessary foundation that guarantees the universe comes out this way. Many people would call that mind or purpose God. Here's a fun way to wrap your head around it. Imagine the universe as a perfectly arranged symphony. Every note, every instrument, every beat perfectly in tune. Cosmic inflation is like the opening crescendo, and the initial conditions are the score that ensures harmony. Without that precise setup, the symphony never plays, and the music of the cosmos never reaches our ears. But it did, and we're here to listen. So next time you gaze at the stars or just look up from your phone and take a deep breath, think about this. The universe didn't just happen to expand in a way that allows life. Its initial conditions were staggeringly precise, almost impossibly so. That extreme improbability hints at a deeper explanation, a logical necessity, or even an intentional setup. Logic, probability, and awe all point towards something beyond random chaos, something ultimate that made the universe's perfect beginning possible. And that, my friends, is the logic of cosmic inflation, a scientific, logical, and awe-inspiring argument that the universe's beginning wasn't just a fluke. It's a clue, a nudge from reality itself that points toward design, necessity, and possibly God.
Anthropic principle, the strong form. All right. Let's talk about something that will make you feel like the universe is not just random chaos, but maybe, just maybe, set up with conscious beings in mind. I'm talking about the anthropic principle, specifically the strong form of it. Now, don't let the fancy name scare you. It's actually a simple and mind-blowing idea. Here's the basic question. Why does the universe seem perfectly arranged for conscious observers like us to exist? Think about it. Tiny tweaks in the laws of physics, the strength of gravity, the behavior of electrons, or even the speed at which the universe expanded, and life as we know it wouldn't exist. No stars, no planets, no humans pondering this very argument. Yet, somehow, we're here. That's the strong form of the anthropic principle. It doesn't just say the universe happens to allow life. It suggests the universe seems logically arranged to make conscious life possible. Let's make it relatable. Imagine a video game coded so precisely that the player can only exist if every rule, every system, every variable is perfectly balanced. If the programmers changed a single parameter, the game would crash, or the player would never exist. That's what our universe feels like. From the tiniest particles to the largest galaxies, everything aligns so perfectly that conscious life can exist to notice it. Or picture a billion-piece jigsaw puzzle that somehow assembled itself into a coherent picture, perfectly aligned so that observers can see it. Mind-blowing, right? The universe isn't just compatible with life. It's like it was set up to produce conscious beings, capable of understanding and reflecting on it. The probability of this happening purely by chance is astronomically tiny. It's like buying a lottery ticket every second since the beginning of time and somehow winning every single time, just so that conscious observers could emerge billions of years later. So what does this mean logically?
The strong anthropic principle nudges us toward thinking that the universe isn't entirely random. There's either design or some sort of necessary reason behind the arrangement of everything. It's as if the universe is telling us, I exist this way so that you can exist and notice me. That's a profound statement if you think about it. It's almost like the cosmos is set up, not just for matter and energy, but for consciousness itself. Let's make it personal. Have you ever stopped and thought that if just one fundamental law of physics were slightly different, you wouldn't be here? None of this. No stars, no Earth, no life, no awareness. That's staggering. The universe has this razor-thin margin where everything works out perfectly, and it just so happens we exist within that margin. It's like the universe rolled a billion dice and got a perfect outcome, billions of times in a row, just so that conscious observers could emerge. That's not random. It's extraordinary. Philosophers and scientists have long debated what this points to. Some say it's sheer coincidence, but the numbers are mind-boggling. Others suggest a deeper intelligence or purpose behind the cosmos, a mind that set it up so that conscious beings could arise and reflect on it. And for many, that ultimate mind is what people call God, the necessary being who created a universe capable of observation, understanding, and reflection. Now, imagine looking at the stars tonight. Every star, every galaxy, every particle of matter. The universe isn't just out there. It's arranged in a way that allows you to exist, to see it, to think about it, and to marvel at it. That's the strong anthropic principle in action. The universe is logically arranged for conscious observers. It's not just a quirk of physics. It's a profound clue that reality has a deeper reason, a hidden order, a mind or logic behind it. So, next time you gaze at the cosmos, take a moment. Think about your own existence, your awareness, your capacity to reflect on the universe. That alone is evidence that the universe isn't just compatible with consciousness. It seems intentionally set up for it. Logic, observation, and awe all point towards something beyond randomness, something ultimate, something foundational, something that for many thinkers is God. The universe didn't have to be this way, but somehow it is. And that fact alone is enough to make you pause, wonder, and maybe even feel a little humbled by the cosmic design or logic that brought conscious observers into being.
Boltzmann brain argument. All right, let's dive into a concept that sounds like science fiction, but is actually a real thought experiment in physics and philosophy. The Boltzmann brain. Trust me, your mind is about to get a serious twist. Imagine this. You suddenly appear, fully conscious with all your memories intact. You remember childhood, school, friendships, adventures, even this exact YouTube video you're watching. But here's the catch. None of it ever really happened. You just randomly popped into existence, complete with memories, floating in a void with no universe, no planets, no stars, just you. Weird, right? That's exactly the scenario Boltzmann proposed. The idea comes from physicist Ludwig Boltzmann, who thought about how random fluctuations in a vast, chaotic universe could theoretically create isolated conscious brains. These brains would appear fully formed, with memories and experiences of a world that never actually existed. In other words, it's a fully conscious mind generated out of sheer randomness. You, as a random brain, might believe the universe exists, but in reality, it doesn't. Mind-bending, right? Now here's the twist. If the universe were entirely random, it would actually be far more probable for a single brain to pop into existence than for an entire structured universe to exist with stars, galaxies, planets, and life. Statistically, pure chance favors isolated consciousness over a consistent, ordered cosmos. That's the paradox. If randomness alone governs reality, we'd more likely be these lonely floating Boltzmann brains than beings experiencing a real universe. Let's make this relatable. Imagine winning the lottery once. That's lucky, right? Now imagine winning the jackpot every single day for billions of years. That's the kind of odds we're talking about when it comes to a fully formed universe appearing by chance. Infinitesimal. And yet, here we are, not just existing, but existing in a stable, predictable, law-abiding universe where planets orbit stars, chemistry works, and history makes sense. Far more than mere luck. Or picture waking up inside a video game that looks completely real, only to realize it's a random glitch in the code. You have memories, experiences, and awareness, but none of it is grounded in reality. That's the Boltzmann brain. But thankfully, our world isn't like that. Everything is consistent. Science works. Stars move predictably. History lines up. Memories match reality. That order is far more probable if the universe is coherent and structured rather than a chaotic collection of random, isolated consciousnesses. So what does this tell us logically? The fact that we experience a coherent universe instead of a disordered, random scenario strongly suggests that there's order and design behind reality, something that makes stable conscious life possible. In other words, our existence is far more plausible if the universe is intentionally or necessarily structured to support observers like us. Philosophers love this argument because it flips the usual everything is random idea on its head. It says if randomness were all there is, it's actually more likely we'd be these isolated Boltzmann brains, disconnected from a real universe. But we aren't. We exist in a real, stable cosmos. That points toward a designer, a logical framework, or some ultimate source that ensures observers like us can exist. And for many, that ultimate source is what people call God. Think about it when you wake up tomorrow. Everything you experience, every star in the sky, every law of physics, every memory, our reality is consistent, not random, not chaotic, not a fleeting illusion of a solitary brain in a void. Logic, probability, and observation all point toward something deeper behind the universe, something that gives rise to stable, conscious life. So next time you look at the cosmos, or marvel at the order of your own mind, remember the Boltzmann brain argument. Your existence is far more probable in a structured, designed universe than in random chaos. And that points logically and beautifully to an ultimate source behind reality, a designer, a mind, a reason for why anything exists at all. Reality isn't just happening. It's consistent. It's ordered. And that consistency, my friends, is one of the smallest and most profound hints that the universe is set up for conscious observers. And maybe, just maybe, it points to God.
Entropy and the second law of thermodynamics.
All right, let's dive into something that might totally change the way you think about the universe. Entropy and the second law of thermodynamics. Don't worry, it sounds complicated, but I promise it's actually mind-blowingly simple, and it hints at something deeper about why the universe exists at all. So, first, what is entropy? Think of it as a measure of disorder. It's the natural tendency of everything to move from order to chaos. Ice melts into water, coffee cools down, stars burn out, and eventually everything drifts toward disorder. That's the second law in action. Over time, things get messier. Energy spreads out, chaos increases. It's basically the universe's way of saying, don't expect things to stay neat. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The universe didn't start in chaos. It started in an incredibly low entropy state, a state of extreme order. Picture the Big Bang, all that matter, energy, and space packed into a perfectly structured, highly organized initial condition. That's like shuffling a deck of cards a billion times and somehow ending up perfectly sorted. Spades, hearts, diamonds, clubs, all in order. It's almost unimaginably improbable. Or let's make it even more relatable. Imagine your room naturally getting messier every day. Now imagine it starting out perfectly clean without anyone tidying it. That's basically the universe at its birth. Unbelievably tidy, incredibly ordered, and perfectly primed for everything that followed. Galaxies, stars, planets, life, and eventually us. That perfect start is not something that normally happens by chance in a system governed by entropy. So why is this important? Well, something had to set that initial order. If the universe had begun in chaos, stars wouldn't have formed, planets wouldn't exist, and life would be impossible. The odds of randomly getting such a perfectly ordered beginning are astronomically tiny. This isn't just science, it's a logical puzzle. The universe required a foundation, a prior state that made its extraordinary order possible. And that's where philosophy and physics come in. Philosophers and physicists often point out that this low entropy beginning is a clue, a hint, that the universe didn't just accidentally fall into place. There's a reason it started so perfectly. Something set the stage, something that made it logically possible for the cosmos to unfold the way it did. That something could be a law, a necessary principle, or even an intelligence behind it all. Many thinkers would call that ultimate source God. And think about it. Entropy governs everything around us every day. Ice melts, coffee cools down, your room gets messy, but the universe started in extraordinary order. That alone is enough to make you pause. It's like watching the clockwork of existence and realizing that the first tick was set up perfectly, and every tick since has followed logically from it. That's why the universe exists in a way that supports life, complexity, and consciousness. Here's a fun way to reflect on it. Every time you sip a hot drink, or watch a star twinkle, or see the sunrise, remember that it all began from a state of perfect order. That perfect beginning wasn't trivial. It's a logical hint pointing to a deeper source, a foundation that allowed the universe to become what it is today. The universe didn't have to start this way, yet it did. And that perfect start suggests something ultimate, necessary, and profound behind it all. A reason, a structure, or maybe what many call God. So next time you marvel at the cosmos, or even just glance around your room at a messy desk, remember, the universe began with astonishing order, defying random chance. Logic, physics, and awe all point to a prior state that set everything in motion. Something beyond entropy made the ordered beginning possible. That's one of the clearest, most fascinating clues that the cosmos is grounded in something ultimate, something foundational, and maybe even something divine. quantum collapse, and consciousness. All right, let's dive into one of the weirdest, most mind-bending intersections of physics and philosophy: quantum collapse and consciousness. Trust me, this one will make you feel like reality itself is paying attention to you. So first, what's going on in the quantum world? In quantum mechanics, particles don't exist in just one state. They exist in a cloud of probabilities, like they could be here or there, spinning one way or the other, all at the same time. It's only when we observe these particles that something magical happens. The probabilities collapse into a definite state. That's called wave function collapse. Basically, reality isn't fully real until someone looks at it. This idea leads to a super wild thought experiment you've probably heard of: Schrödinger's cat. Imagine a cat in a box with a quantum device that has a 50-50 chance of releasing poison. Until you open the box, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. It's the act of observation that forces reality to choose one outcome. The cat is both dead and alive in superposition until you peek. Weird, right? And the takeaway isn't just about cats. It's about observation creating reality. Now, here's the philosophical kicker. If particles need observation to exist in a definite state, could it be that consciousness itself is logically necessary for reality to exist the way we experience it? In other words, without observers, the universe might just be a cloud of probabilities, a blur of possibilities. Reality as we know it depends on observation. Your awareness isn't just a side effect, it's deeply tied to the universe itself. Let's make it relatable. Think of your favorite video game streaming in a buffer. Until you click play, the full picture isn't rendered. As soon as you start watching, the game fills in the pixels, the worlds appear, and everything is concrete. In a way, your observation renders reality in the same sense. Without consciousness to collapse the wave function, the universe might just sit in quantum limbo, undefined, unobserved. So, what does this imply logically? If observation is necessary to bring reality into a definite state, consciousness isn't an accidental byproduct of the universe. It's fundamental. Reality itself depends on it. That flips the usual "the universe exists and consciousness arises randomly" on its head. Instead, consciousness might be part of the logical foundation of the cosmos. And here's where it gets really interesting. If consciousness is logically fundamental, then perhaps there is an ultimate consciousness that underlies all reality. Something necessary that guarantees both the universe and observers like us exist. Philosophers argue that this ultimate consciousness is precisely what many people call God, a mind that grounds existence itself, ensuring that reality isn't just a chaotic cloud of probabilities, but a structured, observable universe. Think about it. Every time you look at a star, notice a cup of coffee, or even read this text, you are participating in the collapse of possibilities into reality. Your awareness matters. It shapes the way the universe shows up. Logic, quantum physics, and observation all point to a mind, a fundamental observer, a necessary consciousness that makes reality possible. So next time you marvel at the cosmos, or even just glance at your desk, remember this: your act of observation is more than passive. It's an intimate part of existence itself. And if consciousness is logically necessary for reality, then there must be a foundational consciousness behind it all. Something ultimate, something necessary, that makes both the universe and observers like us possible. In other words, quantum physics might not just be weird science. It might be pointing straight to a profound truth. Consciousness is baked into reality itself, and the ultimate consciousness is the source of everything. That's one of the mind-blowing, logic-driven clues that point toward God.
Multiverse paradox. All right, let's dive into a topic that sounds like science fiction, but is actually a real debate in physics and philosophy. The multiverse. You've probably heard the idea maybe there are infinite universes out there, each with different laws, constants, even different versions of you. Sounds wild, right? But here's the kicker. Even infinite universes don't get rid of the need for a logical first cause. So first, what's the multiverse? The concept is simple enough to wrap your head around, even if it feels like your brain is stretching. The multiverse hypothesis says there could be countless universes, each one different. Some might have completely different physical laws. Some might be almost identical to ours, just with tiny changes. Some people even argue that if there are infinite universes, one of them had to be just right for life, and that could explain why our universe is fine-tuned. Sounds like a cheat code for existence, right? But here's the paradox. Even if there are infinite universes, they all still exist, and something existing needs a reason. Otherwise, it's just infinite nothingness pretending to exist. Infinity might seem like it solves the problem, like, oh, there's always another universe, so why worry? But it doesn't. Logic still asks, why is there something rather than nothing? And infinity doesn't answer that. It just moves the question back a step. What grounds the existence of all those infinite universes? Let's make this relatable. Picture an infinite line of dominoes stretching forever in both directions. You might think, no first domino? Fine, they can just fall forever. But hold on, what starts the chain of falling? Without a push, the dominoes just stand there. Infinity alone doesn't create motion. It doesn't explain why anything happens at all. You need a cause, something that kicks off the entire chain. That's the logical first cause. Or imagine an infinite library filled with books. Every possible story, every possible law of physics. Sounds amazing, right? But here's the catch. Someone had to create the library rules. Someone had to establish the possibility of the books, the order, the structure. The infinite collection doesn't exist by itself. It relies on a foundation. Otherwise, it's just imaginary. This is why philosophers point out that even infinite universes require a first cause. Infinity is impressive, but it doesn't explain why there is existence itself. Logic demands a foundation, something necessary that doesn't depend on anything else to exist. That ultimate, self-existent reality is what many thinkers call God, the first cause that grounds everything, whether it's one universe, multiple universes, or infinite universes. Now, let's make it personal. Even if there are endless worlds, galaxies, and possibilities, the real question isn't what's out there, it's why anything exists at all. The multiverse doesn't remove that question. It sharpens it. What is the reason, the necessary foundation, the ultimate reality that makes all possible universes possible? Logic points to something ultimate, beyond space, time, and even infinity itself.
So when you think about the multiverse, don't get lost in imagining infinite versions of yourself or wild alternate realities. The mind-blowing part isn't the number of universes. It's that all of them still rely on a first cause. Something had to exist first. Something that doesn't depend on anything else to exist. That ultimate self-existent reality is what many thinkers call God. In other words, infinity doesn't let us off the hook. No matter how many universes there are, the question of why something exists instead of nothing still demands an answer. The multiverse is fascinating, sure, but it only makes the case stronger for a first cause, a necessary being, the ultimate reality that makes everything else possible. Logic, awe, and observation all point toward that ultimate source. That, my friends, is the mind-bending conclusion of the multiverse paradox. Even infinite possibilities need a reason to exist, and that reason is ultimate, necessary, and foundational.
Horizon problem in cosmology. All right, let's talk about a puzzle in cosmology that sounds simple at first, but when you think about it, it's absolutely mind-blowing. The horizon problem. It's one of those things that makes you look at the universe and go, wait, how does this even make sense? So what is the horizon problem? Imagine looking at the cosmos far beyond our galaxy. The universe stretches billions of light years in all directions. And here's the wild part. The distant regions are almost exactly the same. The temperature, density, and structure of these faraway areas are extremely uniform. But here's the kicker. They've never had time to interact with each other. Light hasn't traveled between them since the Big Bang. In other words, these regions couldn't possibly have communicated to synchronize themselves, and yet they look almost identical. That's the puzzle. Logically, if distant regions can't exchange information, you'd expect chaos. You'd expect irregularities, weird temperature differences, and disorder. But instead, the universe is astonishingly uniform. It's as if these distant parts were somehow coordinated from the very beginning. Mind-bending, right? Let's make it relatable. Imagine baking a giant cake without stirring the batter at all. You just dump it in the oven and somehow every single slice has the exact same flavor, texture, and density. No mixing, no effort, just perfect consistency everywhere. That's the horizon problem on a cosmic scale. Or picture two clocks on opposite sides of the planet that never interacted, yet somehow always show the exact same time. How did they stay synchronized? That's the cosmic puzzle scientists are scratching their heads over. Now, physicists have some ideas to explain this, like cosmic inflation, where the universe expanded incredibly fast in its earliest moments, giving distant regions a chance to communicate indirectly. But even with inflation, the sheer level of uniformity still hints at something deeper. The universe seems to be following a plan, a blueprint, an organizing principle. Pure random chance struggles to account for this level of consistency. This is where philosophy and logic come into play. When we see such uniformity, we naturally ask, why is the universe so coordinated? Why does it behave as if it's designed to allow life, structure, and consciousness? The horizon problem is essentially a signpost pointing toward a foundation behind reality, something that ensures that the universe behaves consistently from the very start. Think about it. Every star you see, every galaxy billions of light years away, every patch of cosmic microwave background radiation, all of it shows incredible harmony. That harmony doesn't appear by accident. Something set the rules. Something organized the universe so that it would be stable, predictable, and life-permitting. Philosophers and scientists often say that this organizing principle, this logical foundation, is what many call God. And here's the fun part. It's not just about religion. Even strictly from a logical perspective, uniformity in a system where parts cannot communicate requires explanation. When the cosmos behaves as if it has an underlying order, you're confronted with a mind-bending conclusion. There's something fundamental making it all consistent. Something that ensures that the universe doesn't just descend into chaos, but evolves in a cohesive, orderly way. So next time you gaze at the night sky, remember this. The incredible uniformity of the cosmos isn't trivial. The fact that distant galaxies, stars, and cosmic microwave background radiation all follow a coordinated pattern points toward an organizing principle. Something fundamental, something ultimate, something logically necessary. The universe's order, its astonishing regularity, and its life-permitting structure are hints of a foundation that underlies all reality. Something that makes the cosmos not only possible, but beautifully coherent. Something we could call God. The horizon problem isn't just a physics puzzle. It's a profound clue that reality itself might be grounded in a principle far beyond mere randomness. It's a cosmic whisper reminding us that the universe is orderly, meaningful, and ultimately pointing to something ultimate behind it all.
Mathematical universe hypothesis. All right, let's tackle an idea that's so wild it makes you question whether reality is something you experience or something you just calculate. The mathematical universe hypothesis. This is the brainchild of physicist Max Tegmark, and it basically says, brace yourself, the universe isn't just described by math, it is math. Yeah, you heard that right. Everything, the stars, the planets, your body, your thoughts, even consciousness itself are mathematical structures. They're not just following math, they are math. That's the claim. It's like saying the universe isn't a movie made by a programmer, it's the code itself. The screen, the pixels, the entire story, all at once. Mind-blowing, right? Think about it this way. Imagine a video game. Normally, there's code behind the game, but you're playing in the world the code produces. Now imagine that the world itself is the code. The mountains, the oceans, the physics, the gravity, even the game characters, they're all the math. There's no separate game engine behind it. The universe isn't built on math, it is the math. Like a blueprint that also happens to be the building. Now here's the philosophical twist that makes your brain hurt in a good way. If the universe is math, then math itself has to exist. But why does math exist at all? Why are mathematical truths real rather than imaginary? Why do equations, numbers, and logical structures exist in a way that the universe can actually use them? There has to be an ultimate reason why math exists. Otherwise, the universe itself wouldn't exist. This isn't just a question about physics, it's about existence itself. And think about it, math works. The laws of physics, the equations describing motion, gravity, energy, are stunningly accurate. Why does math fit reality so perfectly? If reality is math, then math isn't contingent. It's fundamental. It can't not exist. But what makes it necessary? That's the real puzzle. Here's where logic comes in. Something that is necessary, something that cannot not exist, is exactly what philosophers mean by a necessary being. If math is the foundation of reality, then that necessary being must exist to ensure that math, and by extension the universe, exists. Something fundamental that guarantees that logical structures, equations, and reality itself exists. Many thinkers would call that necessary ultimate source God. So when you're staring at the night sky, or marveling at the elegance of an equation, or even just thinking about how your smartphone obeys the laws of physics perfectly, remember this: what you're seeing isn't just coincidence. You're witnessing math in action, math made real. And math itself points towards something beyond math, a logically necessary foundation that ensures all these patterns exist, a source that makes the universe possible. It's incredible, really. The universe isn't just ordered or designed, it's structured in the very fabric of logic itself. And if math itself exists necessarily, that necessary existence is like the ultimate proof that reality has a foundation beyond chance, beyond randomness, beyond physical laws. Something ultimate, necessary, and logical underpins it all. Something that makes math, physics, life, and consciousness possible. Something many would call God. So next time you marvel at physics, equations, or even the simplest math trick, remember this: the universe isn't just following math, it is math. And math itself hints at an ultimate, necessary source, the logical foundation of everything. A source that makes reality possible. A source that is, in every sense, mind-blowingly ultimate.
Big Bang singularity. All right, let's dive into one of the most mind-bending ideas in cosmology: the Big Bang singularity. This isn't just about the universe expanding, it's about the very beginning of time itself. And the more you think about it, the more it points toward something truly mind-blowing, a cause outside of time. So what exactly is a singularity? At the moment of the Big Bang, all of space, all matter, all energy, and even time itself were compressed into an unimaginably tiny point called a singularity. Imagine everything in the universe squeezed into a single spot smaller than an atom, where the laws of physics as we know them completely break down. Gravity, density, temperature, all infinite. It's a place where our equations stop making sense. That's the singularity. Now here's where it gets crazy, because time itself began at that singularity. Asking what happened before the Big Bang is actually meaningless in the usual sense. Time as we experience it didn't exist yet. There was no ticking clock, no before and after, no sequence of events. Time itself was born in that singularity. Let me give you a relatable analogy. Think of starting a movie on your phone. The moment you hit play, time in the story begins. Asking what happened before the movie started doesn't make sense. There's no before inside the film. Or imagine a book where the very first page appears suddenly. There are no earlier pages.
Whatever created the first page must exist outside the book, beyond its pages, beyond the story. That's what the Big Bang singularity is like, the very first page of the universe. Here's the philosophical punchline. Logic tells us that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, but its beginning is not just an event inside time, it is the beginning of time itself. That means the cause of the universe cannot be part of time. It must be timeless, eternal, and outside the universe itself. Nothing within the universe could cause time to exist. It has to be something beyond the universe and time itself. Let that sink in for a moment.
Can you imagine something timeless acting, something outside of all space and time making existence happen? It's tough, right? Our brains are wired to think in sequences and durations, but here we're talking about a cause that is completely eternal, not bound by past or future, a being that simply exists. Philosophers and cosmologists often point to this as exactly what people call God, a necessary, timeless source that makes everything else possible. And it's not just philosophy. Physics backs it up. When we trace the universe backward, the math inevitably leads to a singularity, a point where time, space, and matter emerge. Science is telling us the universe had a beginning, and the beginning is a place where the roles we know didn't exist. Something had to bring it into being, and that something must exist outside the universe and time itself. Think about it this way. Every second you live, time flows forward, but at the Big Bang, time itself didn't exist yet. So the very flow of time that structures all our experiences depends on a cause outside of that flow. That's a profound clue. It's as if the universe is whispering, I had a beginning, and my beginning points beyond me. So next time you gaze at the stars or think about the vast expanse of space, remember this. The very start of everything, the singularity where time itself begins, points to a cause beyond time, a timeless source that makes reality possible. It's logic meeting cosmology, showing us that the universe isn't just random. It has an origin that transcends everything we can measure, a foundation that is eternal, necessary, and ultimate. That, in every sense, is what many call God. The Big Bang singularity is more than just science. It's a window into the ultimate cause, a reminder that the beginning of time itself implies something beyond time, something eternal, something ultimate. And that's one of the most powerful logic-driven reasons to believe that reality has a necessary, timeless foundation.
Infinity and God. All right, let's talk about one of the most mind-bending concepts in philosophy, math, and physics, infinity. And no, I'm not talking about just really big numbers or the kind of I'll count to 1 billion someday infinity. I mean actual infinity, something that literally has no end. And if you pay attention, infinity isn't just a number. It's a clue pointing to something beyond our physical universe, something that many call God. So first, let's break it down. In math, infinity is something we can play with all the time. You can add numbers forever, 1, 2, 3, never ending. You can divide, create infinite sets, or imagine infinite points on a line. Mathematicians call this actual infinity. It's abstract, yes, but it exists perfectly in the realm of logic and mathematics. There's no contradiction. Infinity is clean, precise, and entirely real in math. But in the physical world, things get tricky. Everything we measure, stars, planets, even space itself, is finite. Even the universe, as far as we can tell, has limits. So actual infinity doesn't physically exist. You can't hold it, touch it, or measure it. If someone told you they had an infinite library or an infinite amount of matter, your brain would probably explode. It can't exist in our universe. Infinity is too big to be physical. It points beyond matter. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine an infinitely big library. Shelves stretch endlessly, books piled in every direction forever. It's beautiful in your imagination, but could it exist physically? Could you actually walk through it, touch all those books, hold infinity in your hands? No. Infinity can exist conceptually, but physically, it's impossible. That tells us something profound. The idea of infinity hints at a reality beyond the physical, something eternal, boundless, and ultimate. Or think about the number line. Numbers go 1, 2, 3 forever. You can always add one more, always go further, always increase. That's math, pure logic. But could you physically create something infinite? Could you build an actual material infinite number line? Not a chance. The infinite exists in principle, but not in material reality. That distinction is huge. Infinity isn't just about numbers. It's about existence itself. Now here is where it gets philosophical. Since actual infinity can exist mathematically, but not physically, it suggests there's something beyond the universe, beyond matter, and beyond space and time that does have infinity. Something that is eternal, unbounded, and necessary. That's the kind of reality that philosophers point to when they talk about God. Infinity isn't just a math trick. It's a pointer to the ultimate source of everything. Think about it. When we encounter infinity in math, we can grasp it logically. But when we think of it in reality, eternal time, boundless space, limitless cause, it becomes something that must exist beyond the universe, something infinite that guarantees the possibility of everything else. That's God. Timeless, limitless, ultimate. The concept of infinity in math and logic points us toward a reality that transcends physical constraints, a reality that underpins existence itself. So, next time you hear the word infinity, don't just think about numbers or endless space. Think about what it points to. Something beyond the physical, something eternal and ultimate. Infinity isn't just an idea. It's a clue to the source of everything. A reminder that the foundation of reality is infinite, necessary, and beyond comprehension. That, my friends, is what we call God, the ultimate infinity that makes all existence possible. Infinity isn't just a number, it's a message from logic and mathematics, pointing to a reality beyond what we can measure, beyond what we can touch, beyond time and space. A reality that is eternal, boundless, and ultimate.
That is the mind-blowing power of infinity. It doesn't just exist in math. It points to the source of all that exists. Cantor's hierarchy of infinities. Did you know that not all infinities are created equal? Some are bigger than others. Most people think infinity is just infinite, big numbers that never end. But math has a secret. There are multiple levels of infinity, and some are bigger than others. And here's the kicker. It might just give us one of the clearest hints of God in the realm of logic. Meet George Cantor, a 19th century mathematician who completely transformed how we think about infinity. Cantor discovered that infinity isn't just one simple, endless number. No, there are layers of infinity, each bigger than the last. Mind-blowing, right? Let's start simple. Take the set of all counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, forever. That's infinite. But now think about the set of all points on a line segment. Every tiny fraction, every decimal, every point between 0 and 1. That's also infinite. But here's the crazy part. The infinity of points on a line is larger than the infinity of counting numbers. You can't match them 1 to 1. There are more points than numbers, even though both sets are infinite. Cantor didn't stop there. He realized there's a whole hierarchy of infinities, layers stacked on layers, each bigger than the one before. It's like ladders of infinity going up forever, each rung higher than the last. The smallest infinity is infinite numbers. The next infinity is infinite points, and there are even higher levels beyond that. Here's a fun analogy. Hilbert's Infinite Hotel. Imagine a hotel with infinite rooms. Even if every room is full, you can still fit more guests by cleverly shifting everyone down a room. That's the smallest infinity. But Cantor showed there are infinities beyond that, even bigger than the infinity of all hotel rooms. It's like a hotel with infinitely many infinite hotels inside it. Crazy, right? Now, let's bring philosophy into the mix. If math itself has layers of infinity, could reality mirror that? Could there be a highest infinity, an ultimate source of all other infinities, the foundation that underlies everything? Something so ultimate that all other infinities are contained within it logically. That's where the connection to God comes in. Think about it. If the universe, math, and reality have structures that are infinite, maybe there's a top-level infinity, a logically necessary, ultimate infinity that explains why everything else exists. The largest, most fundamental infinity that isn't dependent on anything else, but instead contains all possibilities, all realities, all mathematical and physical structures. Philosophers often call this the ultimate, necessary being. In other words, God. Cantor's discovery isn't just abstract math. It's a window into ultimate reality. Infinity isn't just a number. It's layered, structured, and points to something beyond the physical, something ultimate, something necessary. So, next time you think of infinity, don't stop at the number that never ends. Think bigger. Think about the ladder of infinities, layers beyond layers, each one larger than the last. And then imagine the highest infinity, the ultimate source that holds all others. That's God, seen through the lens of logic, math, and infinity itself. Infinity isn't just a number. It's a message from logic pointing to a reality beyond what we can measure, beyond what we can touch, beyond time and space. A reality that is eternal, boundless, and ultimate. That's the mind-blowing beauty of Cantor's hierarchy. It's not just math, it's a hint of God.
Algorithmic information theory and universe complexity. How can a few simple rules create an entire universe filled with galaxies, life, and consciousness? It sounds almost unbelievable, right? But that's exactly what algorithmic information theory, or AIT, can teach us about the universe. Basically, AIT studies how simple rules can generate extreme complexity. It asks a fascinating question: how simple can a set of instructions be and still produce something amazingly complex? Think about it like this. In computer science, you can write a tiny program, just a few lines of code, and it can create something astonishing. Maybe a complex simulation, intricate graphics, or even an entire virtual world. That's the kind of logic AIT applies to the universe itself. Here's the mind-blowing part. The laws of physics are remarkably simple. Gravity pulls, electromagnetism interacts, quantum particles do their thing. Simple rules. Yet, when these basic principles operate together, they produce a universe of staggering complexity. Galaxies, planets, ecosystems, life, consciousness, even human civilization, all from simple, elegant rules. It's like a cosmic fractal unfolding before our eyes. Speaking of fractals, here's a concrete analogy. Take the Mandelbrot set. A single mathematical formula, repeated over and over, creates infinitely intricate and beautiful patterns. The universe works in a similar way. Simple laws repeating and interacting over time give rise to unimaginable complexity. Stars form, planets collide, life evolves, all from foundational rules that are in themselves simple. Now, here's where logic kicks in. When you see something simple producing complexity so perfectly, it's reasonable to ask, could this really be random? Could chance alone, with no guiding principle, generate such organized complexity? AIT suggests the answer is probably no. Pure randomness doesn't usually give rise to finely tuned, complex systems that work seamlessly together. Something else seems to be behind it, a logical designer. Think about it like a game simulation. Imagine a developer creating a game world. They write a few basic rules, how gravity works, how objects interact, and suddenly an entire universe of possibilities unfolds. Mountains form, rivers flow, creatures evolve. It's the power of simple rules producing complexity.
Now imagine the universe as the game world and the laws of physics as the program code. Logic suggests there's an intelligence behind the code, a designer who set everything in motion. Here's another way to look at it. The universe is like a giant algorithm. Every star, planet, and molecule is part of the output. The input is a few simple laws, but the output is staggering. Algorithmic information theory tells us that when complexity arises from such simplicity, it's rarely accidental. There's usually a source, a plan, or a designer orchestrating the system. So next time you gaze at the night sky or marvel at the patterns of nature, remember, what you see isn't just chaos. Beneath it all are simple rules generating extraordinary complexity. That simplicity, producing such organized complexity, hints at something or someone beyond mere chance. That's a logical designer, a mind behind the universe, a God whose code created everything we see today. Algorithmic information theory is fascinating because it bridges math, logic, and philosophy. It's not a religious argument, it's logic speaking. It shows us that the universe is not just complex for no reason. The very simplicity of the laws that generate all this complexity points to a purposeful, intelligent source, something eternal, rational, and capable of designing a universe as intricate as ours. So, the next time you wonder how the universe came to be, or why the laws of nature are so elegant, remember AIT. Simple rules producing unimaginable complexity don't happen by accident. They point to a designer, a mind capable of creating the ultimate cosmic algorithm. That's God, through the lens of logic, math, and algorithmic reasoning.
Mathematical Platonism and God. Do numbers, shapes, and formulas exist even if no one is around to think about them? It's a crazy thought, right? But that's exactly what mathematical Platonism explores. This is the idea that mathematical truths, numbers, shapes, formulas, aren't just human inventions. They exist objectively, independent of humans, independent of the universe, independent of anything physical. They're discovered, not created. Think about the Pythagorean theorem. A triangle with sides 3, 4, and 5 will always satisfy a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Even if there were no humans, no triangles drawn, no scribbles on paper, that truth would still hold. It's eternal, immutable, perfect. Or consider prime numbers. They existed long before humans even knew how to count, and they'll continue to exist long after humans are gone. Mathematical Platonism tells us that these truths aren't just human inventions. They exist objectively, independent of humans, independent of the universe, independent of anything physical. They're discovered, not created. Now, here's where it gets mind-blowing. If math exists objectively, outside the physical universe, there must be something grounding it, something that holds these eternal, non-physical truths in reality. Otherwise, why would these perfect, timeless structures exist at all? Why does math work so flawlessly to describe the universe, from orbits of planets to quantum particles, if it were just a human invention? Think about it like this. Math isn't just a tool we use to navigate reality, it's woven into reality itself. It's the blueprint, the language, the structure that underlies everything. And something must be the ultimate source of that blueprint. That's where the logic points to a mind beyond the physical universe, an eternal, rational, intelligent mind that contains the truth of math before anything else existed. Let's bring this closer to home. When you solve a problem, see the symmetry in a snowflake, or marvel at the elegance of an equation, you're interacting with the reality that pre-exists your observation. Those mathematical structures aren't made by you, they exist independently. And if they exist independently, then logically they must exist in a mind capable of holding such perfect, timeless truths. Many philosophers argue that this eternal, rational mind is exactly what we call God. Not just a myth or a story, but a mind that provides the foundation for all mathematical truth, and therefore for the structure of reality itself. Math points to something beyond the physical universe, a mind that exists outside space and time, eternal, logical, and perfectly rational. So every time you're working with numbers, studying geometry, or just noticing patterns in nature, remember, these truths are more than human constructs. They hint at a reality beyond our universe, a mind that makes these perfect, eternal truths possible. That's mathematical Platonism in action, and that's God revealed through logic, reason, and the timeless nature of mathematics. In other words, math isn't just a human invention, it's a cosmic clue, a clue that points to a mind beyond our universe, a mind where these perfect structures exist eternally. Every theorem, every pattern, every law of mathematics is like a fingerprint of something greater, something eternal, something we call God.
Logical necessity versus contingency and God. Why is there something instead of nothing? It's one of the deepest questions you can ask. Look around you. Trees, stars, oceans, even yourself. All of this exists, but it didn't have to exist. At least, that's what logic tells us. Everything we see is contingent, meaning it could have not existed. A chair, a planet, or even the universe itself, they exist, but they don't have to. Now think about numbers. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That truth isn't contingent. It must be true. It exists in a way that doesn't depend on anything else. Philosophers call this a necessary truth, something that can't not exist. Here's where things get fascinating. If everything around us is contingent, then nothing could ultimately explain itself. Contingent things can't bring themselves into existence. They rely on something else. A chain of contingent things alone can't answer the question, why is there something rather than nothing? Logic tells us that there must be at least one necessary being, something that exists by its very nature, independent of anything else, uncaused, eternal. This necessary being provides the foundation for all contingent things. Without it, we'd be staring into an unexplainable void, with nothing grounding existence itself. Let's use a simple analogy. Imagine a row of dominoes. Each domino falls because of the one before it. Now, if you trace it back, can the chain go on infinitely without a first domino? Not really. Something had to start the chain, something that doesn't rely on anything else.
That's the idea of a necessary being. It's the first domino that exists by necessity, not by cause. Could the universe itself be this necessary thing? Some have tried to argue that. But here's the problem. The universe is contingent. Its laws, its matter, even time itself began. It's not necessary in the logical sense. Something beyond the universe must exist to explain why the universe exists at all. Many philosophers and logicians point to this necessary being as God, a mind, a being, a reality that doesn't just exist but must exist. Not dependent on anything, not created, eternal, and the foundation for all other things. Existence itself, the fact that there is something rather than nothing, points straight to this being. Think about it for a moment. Every star, every galaxy, every living creature depends on this chain of existence. But at the end of the chain, logic requires a stop, a necessary being, something that exists by the very nature of its existence, not contingent on anything else. That's God through the lens of pure logic. So when you marvel at the universe, or even the simplest things around you, remember, existence itself is a clue. It's a signpost pointing to a necessary reality behind all contingent things, something eternal, independent, uncaused, a being that underlies all reality, a being that must exist. This is what philosophers call the logical necessity of God. It's not based on faith, opinion, or stories. It's based on pure reasoning. The very fact that anything exists demands a foundation that exists by necessity. Without it, there's no explanation for why there is something rather than nothing. Existence itself is pointing at God, not in a mystical sense, but in the clearest, most logical sense possible. A necessary being, eternal and independent, grounding all reality. That's the ultimate explanation for everything. And every time you look at the stars, the oceans, or even yourself, remember, logic itself whispers the answer. God exists as the necessary foundation of all that is.
Probability, miracles, and God. What are the odds that everything in the universe aligns perfectly for life? It's an insane question when you think about it. Stars, planets, elements, chemical reactions, even the tiniest molecules, all working together in perfect harmony so that life can exist. And not just any life, but conscious, self-aware beings capable of asking the exact same question we're asking right now. What are the chances that all of this happened by random chance? Honestly, the odds are mind-bogglingly small. Let's break it down. Probability is basically a measure of how likely something is to happen. Flip a coin, 50-50. That's easy. Roll a die, 1 in 6. Also easy. But the universe? We're talking astronomically tiny probabilities. The Earth is exactly the right distance from the Sun for life. Oxygen levels are perfect, not too high, not too low.
complex molecules formed naturally in precise ways that eventually led to life. And every one of these things had to happen in just the right sequence. The odds of all of this happening by sheer chance? Almost zero. Now, when extremely improbable events happen in ways that seem to support life or consciousness, we often call them miracles. Not necessarily supernatural events, but things so unlikely that chance feels like an insufficient explanation. Think about winning the lottery, but a lottery with odds so tiny it's almost impossible. And now imagine someone wins millions of times in a row. You'd start to suspect intentional design, right? That's exactly what probability is hinting at in the universe. Here's another way to picture it. Imagine the universe as a gigantic casino with trillions upon trillions of bets being placed. The jackpot isn't just winning once, it's the perfect combination of elements, forces, and conditions for life. And somehow, against astronomical odds, life appears. Logic tells us when something that improbable actually occurs, the most plausible explanation is design rather than sheer luck. This doesn't mean miracles are magical in a mystical sense. It means the universe is statistically tailored in ways that make life possible. The more we discover about physics, chemistry, and cosmology, the more it seems that the universe is arranged with incredible precision. And precision in logic points to a mind, something or someone intentionally shaping conditions to allow complex, conscious life. Think about it like a cosmic lottery, but instead of randomly picking numbers, the winning combination was fine-tuned down to the laws of physics, constants of nature, and even the fundamental properties of matter. Each tiny tweak in these constants, and life as we know it wouldn't exist. The odds of all of them aligning by chance? Practically zero. Yet, here we are. Many thinkers argue that these statistically improbable alignments point to a guiding intelligence, a mind behind the universe capable of arranging things intentionally. That's God through the lens of statistical logic, a very logical explanation for why miracles, meaning extraordinarily unlikely events, happen in the precise way necessary for life. So the next time you gaze at the stars, watch a flower bloom, or marvel at your own existence, remember this. Probability itself whispers a clue. It hints that the universe isn't just random chaos. It's highly improbable, organized, and precise. It's the kind of design that points straight to a conscious mind orchestrating reality. That's God, not as a vague idea, but as a logical inference from the improbable perfection of our universe. Probability, miracles, and logic all converge here. The odds of life and order appearing by chance are so low that reason itself suggests intention. Something intelligent designed the cosmic system. Something that ensures that life, consciousness, and you exist today. That's the mind behind it all. That's God through the lens of statistical logic.
Turing completeness of the universe and God. What if the universe is actually a giant computer? It sounds like science fiction, right? But hear me out. Some scientists and philosophers actually suggest that the universe behaves like a computational system. And if that's true, it raises a mind-blowing possibility. There might be a programmer behind it all. Let's start with the basics. In computer science, there's a concept called Turing completeness. A system is Turing complete if it can perform any calculation or run any algorithm as long as it's given the right instructions.
Pretty much any modern computer is Turing complete, which is why your laptop can run thousands of different programs, from word processors to video games to artificial intelligence. Now, imagine that concept on a cosmic scale. The universe, at its most fundamental level, is made of particles, forces, and fields, all following precise laws. These laws aren't random. They behave like rules in a program. When particles interact, it's like data being processed according to algorithms. When chemical reactions happen, it's like subroutines executing. Life emerges, stars form, planets orbit, all as a result of this cosmic computation. Here's where it gets fascinating. If the universe really is running as a computational system, logic suggests there must be an initial programmer. Think about it. Computers don't just spontaneously become functional. Software doesn't install itself. Algorithms don't magically appear perfectly tuned to create intricate systems. A Turing-complete system implies an intelligent mind setting it up, writing the code that allows everything to run. Let's make it more relatable. Imagine a video game. The game world doesn't just exist on its own. Someone, a programmer, wrote the rules. How characters move, how physics works, how interactions unfold. Once the rules are set, the game runs, creating a complex virtual world. Now scale that up to the universe. Particles, forces, atoms, planets, life, all operating according to incredibly precise laws. Logic tells us there must be a cosmic programmer behind the system. Some might argue the universe could have just started itself randomly. Sure, but randomness alone rarely produces fully functional computational systems. If the universe truly is Turing-complete, capable of producing infinite complexity and patterns, then logic points towards intention, a mind capable of setting up such a system. This cosmic programmer isn't just a metaphor. Philosophers and scientists suggest it could be what we call God, an intelligence that designed the laws of physics, set the initial conditions, and created a framework where complexity, life, and consciousness could emerge. Everything running like clockwork, like a massive computation unfolding over billions of years, points to a designer with incredible foresight and planning. Think about it. Every law of nature, every particle interaction, every orbit, every chemical reaction is like a line of code in the universe's program. And when you step back, it's almost overwhelming. The sheer precision, the harmony, the capacity to generate complexity from simple rules. It's exactly what you would expect from a designed computational system, not random chaos. So next time you look at the stars, the patterns in nature, or even the way your own body functions with precise timing and order, consider this. The universe might be running on cosmic code, a Turing-complete program unfolding before your eyes. And behind that code is the ultimate programmer, the mind that created the rules, the laws, and the framework for everything to exist. That mind is what logic, computation, and observation all converge on. God. Logic, mathematics, and science themselves hint at this programmer. If the universe is computational, it wasn't self-generated. It was designed, coded, and executed by an intelligence beyond space and time.
That's the mind behind reality, the ultimate coder of everything you see, touch, and experience. That's God through the lens of Turing completeness.
Self-referential systems, Gödel's theorem, and God. Can logic itself prove everything? Or are there truths it can never reach? It's a wild question, and it might sound abstract, but it actually has huge implications for understanding the universe and even God. Let me explain. At the heart of this idea is something called self-referential systems. A self-referential system is one that can talk about itself or refer to itself. Sounds simple, right? But once you loop back on yourself, things get tricky. Imagine a sentence that says, "This sentence is false." If it's true, then it's false. If it's false, then it's true. That's the kind of paradox self-reference can create. Now here comes the mind-blowing part. In the 1930s, Kurt Gödel, a genius mathematician, proved something astonishing called the incompleteness theorem. He showed that in any sufficiently powerful logical system, like the ones we use in mathematics, there are statements that are true, but cannot be proven within that system. No matter how hard you try, some truths always escape the rules. Some truths exist beyond the system itself. Think about that. Even in a perfectly logical universe, even in mathematics, there are truths that we cannot fully capture from inside the system. It's like a puzzle that can't be solved from within the puzzle, or a computer program that can't fully analyze its own code. Some things are just beyond the system. Now let's apply this idea to reality itself. If the universe is a kind of system, following laws of physics, chemistry, and logic, then maybe there are truths in the universe that can't be fully grasped or proven by beings inside it. Maybe there are aspects of reality that escape our understanding because we're inside the system trying to study it. Here's the kicker. If some truths exist beyond the system, it suggests there's a mind outside the system that knows and contains all truths. Something that exists beyond space, time, and the physical rules of the universe. That something is exactly what we might call God. A mind capable of holding all truths, seeing the whole picture, and understanding everything completely. Something no self-contained system inside the universe could ever do on its own. Let me make it more relatable. Imagine a chess program trying to understand all possible chess games. It's great, but it can only work within the rules it's given. Now imagine an omniscient player outside the program who knows every move, every outcome, every strategy, completely. That's what God is in this analogy. The mind outside the system, knowing all truths, while we are inside the system, limited by its rules. Gödel's incompleteness theorem doesn't just tell us something about math, it tells us something about reality itself. It hints that truths exist beyond the physical world, and beyond any system we build to understand it. And if truth exists beyond the system, logic leads us to a mind beyond the system that knows it. Perfect, eternal, and complete. So, next time you study math, logic, or even ponder the universe, remember, some truths will always escape you. That's not a failure of intelligence, it's a hint. a hint that there's something outside, something eternal, something that holds all truths together. And that, through the lens of Gödel's theorem, is what we can understand as God. Logic itself whispers it. Some truths exist beyond our grasp, and a mind beyond the universe contains them all. That's the ultimate reality. That's God, revealed by self-referential systems and the boundaries of formal logic. Have you ever noticed how nature repeats patterns endlessly, no matter the scale? It's everywhere. Look at a tree, the way the trunk splits into branches, and then branches split into smaller branches and then twigs. It's the same pattern over and over. Look at rivers. They split into smaller streams, and those split again, creating a network of repeating patterns. Even snowflakes, clouds, coastlines, and our own lungs follow this pattern. Mathematicians call these fractals, patterns that repeat at different scales infinitely. What's amazing is how simple rules can create infinite complexity. Take the Mandelbrot set, a famous fractal in math. With a simple formula, you can generate shapes that repeat endlessly, revealing more detail the closer you look. Nature does this all the time. One simple rule in biology or physics leads to unbelievably intricate structures. Yet here's the puzzle. Where do these rules themselves come from? Why do they exist at all? Why does nature follow such precise patterns rather than being chaotic and random? Let's bring it closer to home. Your lungs, for example, branch out like a fractal tree to maximize surface area for oxygen exchange. Rivers form branching tributaries to carry water efficiently. Mountains show repeating patterns of erosion. Even your neurons in the brain have fractal patterns. This is infinite complexity that obeys rules, and it works perfectly every time. Now think about logic. Complexity like this doesn't just appear from randomness without a framework. Infinite patterns that follow rules imply laws behind the laws, a source for the rules themselves. Imagine you were coding a video game. You could randomly place objects, but if you wanted a world that made sense and kept producing complexity, you'd need algorithms and a programmer to set the system in motion. Nature's fractal patterns are like that, but infinitely more intricate. Here's the kicker. If the universe can generate infinite complexity with precise rules, there must be a mind or source behind those rules. Something that structured reality to allow these patterns to unfold. Logic points us toward a designer who set up the program of nature. That designer isn't bound by space or time. It's beyond the system itself, guiding the framework that creates infinite detail and order. Ask yourself, could pure chance create trees that branch perfectly, rivers that split efficiently, and snowflakes that form intricate patterns, all following rules, over and over again? It seems incredibly unlikely. Infinite complexity in nature doesn't just hint at randomness. It points to intentionality, a mind that structured the rules so that this complexity could exist. This is where God comes in, not as a vague idea,
but as the logical source behind nature's fractal and infinite patterns. The very fact that we can trace patterns from a tree branch to a coastline to a snowflake and see repeating, ordered complexity is evidence of a mind behind it. Nature's patterns are like fingerprints, clues pointing to a designer who established the rules that govern all reality. So the next time you look at a tree, watch a river, or marvel at a snowflake under a microscope, think about this. Infinite complexity exists, not randomly, but because the universe follows precise rules. And these rules themselves hint at a source beyond the universe, a mind that set the framework for everything, from galaxies to leaves to human consciousness. Logic, math, and nature all whisper the same thing. Behind the infinite complexity of the universe is God. Fractals, infinite patterns, and rules that produce endless beauty, all of it is pointing to a mind that thought it all out. That mind, eternal and beyond the universe, is what we call God, revealed through the infinite complexity of nature itself.
Number patterns in physics and God. Have you ever noticed that certain numbers show up everywhere in nature? It's one of those things that makes you stop and go, wait, how is this even possible? Numbers like pi, e, and phi aren't just in textbooks. They show up in the real world, over and over, in ways that seem too precise to be random. And the crazy part? This could be a clue pointing straight to a logical architect behind the universe. Let's start with the basics. Pi, that famous 3.14195 number, is the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. Sounds simple, right? But it appears everywhere, from the circles we draw on paper to the orbits of planets, the ripples of water, and even the structure of atoms. Then there's E, the base of natural logarithms. This number pops up in anything that grows or decays naturally. Think populations, compound interest, radioactive decay, even the way heat spreads. And of course, there's phi, the golden ratio. This number shows up in sunflower seeds, pine cones, snail shells, hurricanes, and even the spiral arms of galaxies. Here's the part that blows minds. These numbers are recurring across completely different systems. Circles, growth, and spirals might seem unrelated, but the same mathematical constants govern all of them. That's not just a coincidence, it's a pattern. And patterns, especially consistent ones across independent systems, almost always point to design. Think of it like a signature. Imagine an artist who paints landscapes, portraits, and abstracts, but in every piece they subtly include a hidden symbol. You'd know it was their work, right? That's what pi, e, and phi are doing in the universe. They're like nature's hidden signature, embedded in physics, biology, and cosmology. Now, logic kicks in. If these constants appear so consistently and precisely, then the universe isn't just a chaotic, random mess. There must be rules, a framework, and a source that set those rules. Something intentional. Something that built the universe using the same mathematical blueprint across entirely different domains. Ask yourself, could pi, e, and phi just randomly pop up in the orbits of planets, the patterns of sunflower seeds, and the decay of atoms? The odds are incredibly small. It makes far more sense that a rational mind design these laws, embedding these constants into the very fabric of reality. That mind is what many thinkers call God. Not a vague idea, but a logical source behind the universe's elegant patterns. And it gets even more awe-inspiring. These numbers don't just show up, they guide reality. Pi determines circular motion, E dictates growth and decay, and phi orchestrates proportions that we instinctively recognize as beautiful. This isn't chaos, it's intentional mathematical order. It's as if the universe itself was programmed with a set of constants to allow life, complexity, and even consciousness to exist. So, next time you measure a circle, watch a spiral shell, or admire a sunflower, pause and consider this. These numbers are everywhere. They're consistent, elegant, and precise. And behind that precision is a mind that understood the laws of reality before the universe even existed. A mind that set these constants so life, growth, and harmony could unfold. That mind is the ultimate logical architect, God. Pi, E, phi, they're not just numbers, they're clues. Clues pointing to the order, the design, and the intelligence behind everything we see. When you notice these patterns in nature, you're seeing the signature of a designer, the fingerprints of a mind beyond time and space. Logic, math, and nature all converge on the same truth. The universe has an architect. That architect is God, revealed through the timeless language of numbers.
How does one ever explain the fact that we are aware of anything at all? This question is actually one of the deepest mysteries in science and philosophy. When you see a sunset, hear your favorite song, or bite into chocolate, you don't just react, you experience it. There's a subjective quality to your consciousness. That's what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. And it might just be the clearest clue to God. Here's the idea. Neuroscientists can map every neuron in your brain, measure every chemical reaction, and track every firing pattern. They can even predict your behavior to an impressive degree. But there's a catch. All this research explains what your brain does, not what it feels like to be you. It can tell us that the visual cortex is active when you see red, but it can't tell us why red looks the way it does, or why seeing red produces an actual experience. This gap, the difference between physical processes and subjective experience, is what David Chalmers famously called the hard problem. Why does consciousness exist at all? Why is there something it's like to experience life rather than nothing at all? Computers can process data, AI can make decisions, but they don't feel. A robot could simulate sadness, but it wouldn't actually experience it. And this is where logic starts pointing to something beyond the physical. If consciousness exists and can't be fully explained by matter, energy, or chemistry alone, then there must be more to reality than just the physical universe. There's a gap that material processes alone cannot fill, a gap that implies a source capable of generating subjective experience itself. Think of it like a painting. The chemicals on the canvas form shapes and colors, but that's not the painting itself. It's just the material. The true painting comes from the artist's mind. Similarly, consciousness is not reducible to atoms and molecules. It points to a mind beyond the material, a source that can produce experience itself. Ask yourself,
Could billions of random chemical reactions truly generate the richness of joy, wonder, or self-awareness? Could purely physical processes explain the feeling of love, awe, or even curiosity as you're listening to this? Logic suggests not. There's an extra layer, something beyond the physical, that accounts for the existence of subjective experience. This is where God comes in a logical sense. If consciousness exists, and the hard problem shows it cannot emerge from matter alone, then there must be a conscious source beyond the universe. A mind capable of not just creating atoms or galaxies, but experience itself. Capable of generating awareness, meaning, and perception. That mind, eternal and all-knowing, is what we call God. So, the next time you marvel at your own thoughts, your emotions, or the beauty you experience in the world, remember, consciousness isn't just a byproduct of biology. It's a window into a mind beyond the universe, a glimpse of the ultimate source of experience. Every sensation, every thought, every feeling you have is a whisper of something greater, a conscious architect of reality. The hard problem of consciousness doesn't just challenge neuroscience, it challenges materialism. It challenges the idea that reality is purely physical. And when you follow the logic to its natural conclusion, it points to God, the mind that explains why subjective experience exists at all. Your awareness, your inner life, your very ability to question and wonder, all of it points to something beyond atoms and energy. It points to a divine consciousness, the ultimate source behind all experience. Consciousness, in all its mystery and richness, is one of the clearest signs of a mind beyond the universe. Logic, observation, and experience all converge on this point. The hard problem of consciousness is not just a problem. It's a clue pointing to God, the mind that explains why subjective experience exists at all.
Panpsychism, logic, and God. What if everything around you, rocks, trees, even atoms, had some form of awareness? It sounds like science fiction, but there's a serious philosophical idea behind it called panpsychism. Panpsychism suggests that consciousness isn't just something humans or animals have, it's a fundamental property of the universe. In other words, awareness isn't something that magically pops up when life appears. It might be built into the very fabric of reality. Think about it for a second. When you look at a tree, a rock, or even the air around you, everything seems inanimate. But what if, at the tiniest level, every particle has some degree of awareness? Not consciousness like yours or mine, but a primitive, fundamental kind of experiencing. Electrons, protons, quarks, maybe they carry the seeds of consciousness. That's the radical claim of panpsychism. Now, why does this idea make sense logically? Well, if consciousness exists at all, it's extremely hard to explain how it could emerge from matter that has no awareness whatsoever. If electrons, atoms, or the building blocks of reality are entirely unconscious, then consciousness appearing in humans seems almost miraculous, like a spark appearing from rocks without any cause.
But if consciousness is fundamental, woven into reality itself, then humans, animals, and life in general are simply complex expressions of a universal awareness. Let's make an analogy. Think about electricity. Individual electrons don't have feelings, but when enough of them interact in a system, they create observable phenomena like light or energy. In the same way, fundamental consciousness could exist at the micro level, combining in complex forms to produce the rich, vivid awareness you experience. Here's where logic starts pointing to something bigger. If consciousness is everywhere at some level, and yet we experience it as unified and coherent, there must be a source that integrates and sustains it all. You can't have fragments of awareness scattered randomly without some organizing principle. For panpsychism to make sense, there must be an ultimate, conscious mind, a mind that contains and unifies all awareness. That mind is what we call God. Ask yourself, could awareness, the very feeling of being alive, arise purely by chance from random matter? Could tiny unconscious particles ever spontaneously produce the inner life you're experiencing right now? Logic suggests otherwise. Consciousness seems too fundamental, too structured, and too universal to be an accident. There must be a conscious source behind it, a mind that precedes and sustains all others. This is powerful because it doesn't just explain consciousness in humans. It explains why reality itself has awareness at all. Panpsychism turns the question inside out. Instead of asking, how did consciousness emerge from matter, it asks, what kind of universe is it where consciousness is fundamental? The answer, one created or grounded in a conscious source, one where God is the ultimate mind that underlies all reality. So next time you reflect on your own awareness or feel a sense of presence in the world, remember, consciousness itself might be pointing to something far greater than the material universe. It's a window into a mind that exists beyond time, space, and matter. A mind that organizes, sustains, and gives life to everything. That is God revealed through the fundamental consciousness woven into all things. Logic, observation, and reflection converge here. If consciousness is fundamental, there must be a conscious source. Panpsychism isn't just a theory about particles, it's a clue to the ultimate mind behind all reality.
Information theory and mind and God. What if your thoughts, feelings, and experiences could be understood as information? It sounds a bit sci-fi, but bear with me. This idea actually makes a lot of sense when we think about consciousness. Modern science, especially information theory, studies how information is stored, transmitted, and processed. And when you look at your mind through this lens, it's like discovering that you're a walking, thinking, feeling data system. Every thought, every memory, every sensation is information being processed in a highly organized and meaningful way. Now, here's the kicker. We know from information theory that information doesn't create itself. Random noise isn't information. For something to carry meaning, to be structured, organized, and usable, it requires an intelligent source. Think about a book. Pages filled with letters are meaningless unless someone wrote them to convey ideas. Or consider a computer program. It's just zeros and ones until a programmer designs it with intent and structure. Your consciousness is much more complex than any book or program. It's a system that processes vast amounts of information, generates experiences, self-reflection, creativity, and awareness. And yet, it emerges from physical matter, neurons and chemicals firing in a precise, highly organized way. If meaningful information requires intelligence in human systems, doesn't it make sense that consciousness, which is far more complex and meaningful, also requires an intelligent origin? Let's bring it a bit closer to home. DNA is information too. It stores instructions for building life. But DNA didn't randomly assemble itself in a way that produces functional organisms. It's structured, complex, and elegant. Similarly, consciousness as information is highly organized and structured. There's a pattern, a logic, and a coherence that suggest it wasn't random. It was designed. Now, you might wonder, could consciousness just arise by accident from random chemical reactions? Logic and information theory say no. Random processes can generate noise, but meaningful, structured, and self-aware information, that points to a mind behind the process. In other words, the source of consciousness itself is an intelligent mind, capable of creating, sustaining, and organizing information into awareness. And this is where God comes in the logical sense. If consciousness is fundamentally information, then the ultimate origin of all consciousness must be a mind that understands and creates information at the highest level. That mind isn't limited by space, time, or matter. It's capable of producing the rules, the systems, and the structure that give rise to every conscious experience. That mind is God. Think about it next time you reflect on your thoughts. Remember a cherished memory or feel a deep emotion. You're experiencing information in its most extraordinary form, your consciousness. And the very existence of that meaningful, organized information is a clue to an intelligent origin beyond the universe. It's as if the universe itself carries a signature, a design, a mind that gave rise to all awareness. That mind is God. So when you see your thoughts, feelings, and experiences not just as random chemical events, but as highly structured information, logic nudges you to a conclusion that consciousness as information points to a conscious, intelligent source behind it all. God is the ultimate mind that created the framework for experience itself. Information isn't just a concept in computers or DNA. It's the very fabric of your awareness. And the fact that your consciousness exists as organized, meaningful information is one of the clearest signs that there's a mind behind it all. A mind that thought it out, structured it, and gave rise to everything you experience. That's God, revealed through the lens of information. Could your mind be connected to the universe at the quantum level? It sounds like something out of science fiction, but the quantum mind hypothesis takes this idea seriously. Scientists and philosophers have been exploring whether consciousness isn't just a byproduct of neurons firing, but something more fundamental, something that interacts with the very building blocks of reality itself. Here's the basic idea. At the quantum level, the universe behaves in ways that are strange, mysterious, and counterintuitive. Particles can exist in superposition, meaning they can be in multiple states at the same time until someone observes them. And through entanglement, particles can instantaneously influence each other across vast distances, even light years apart. Somehow, reality seems to care when it's being observed. This is where the mind comes in. If observation affects quantum systems and our consciousness is the observer, then maybe mind isn't just a byproduct of matter. It might be fundamental to reality. In other words, consciousness could be baked into the universe, playing a role in how it unfolds. Think of it like a quantum computer. Until it's measured, it exists in many states simultaneously. Its output depends on the way it's observed. Could the universe work in a similar way, with consciousness influencing reality at a fundamental level? If that's true, then mind isn't secondary, it's primary. And logic starts pointing upward. If consciousness is fundamental and intimately tied to the quantum structure of reality, then the ultimate source of all quantum activity and conscious experience must itself be conscious. Matter and energy alone cannot account for the subtle, ordered complexity of quantum interactions. Something beyond physical laws must underlie it, orchestrating the universe in a coherent, meaningful way. That source is what we call God. Ask yourself, could superposition, entanglement, and the mysterious behavior of quantum particles be mere accidents with no guiding intelligence? Or do they hint at a deeper reality, where mind is woven into the very fabric of existence? Logic leans toward the latter. A universe where consciousness is fundamental suggests a supreme mind at the root of all reality. Even more fascinating, if mind is fundamental, then the universe isn't just a cold, lifeless machine. It's a living, conscious cosmos with awareness embedded at every level. And within this living universe, our own consciousness is a reflection, a glimpse of the ultimate mind orchestrating it all. That mind is God. So next time you think, reflect, or simply observe the world around you, consider this. Your mind may not just be a passenger on a lifeless planet. It could be a participant in a universe where consciousness is woven into the core of reality. Logic, quantum theory, and observation all point toward a conscious source behind the universe, a mind that is the ultimate architect, God. The quantum mind hypothesis doesn't just challenge neuroscience, it challenges our understanding of reality itself. It suggests that mind and matter are deeply interconnected, and that consciousness may be a fundamental feature of existence. When we follow this logic, it leads naturally to a supreme, intelligent, conscious source, God, the ultimate mind behind it all. In other words, every thought you have, every decision you make, and every moment of awareness may be connected at the deepest level to a conscious universe, a universe with a mind, a purpose, and a designer. That designer is God, revealed through the strange and fascinating logic of quantum consciousness. Self-awareness and infinity and God. Have you ever thought about the fact that you can think about your own thoughts? It's a simple idea at first glance, but when you really dive into it, it's mind-blowing. Humans aren't just aware of the world, we're aware of ourselves. We can reflect on our thoughts, examine our feelings, question our decisions, and even think about thinking itself. This ability is called self-awareness, and it's one of the most profound clues to understanding consciousness and ultimately God. Think about it like this. When you realize I am thinking right now, your mind isn't just operating, it's observing itself. You're holding a mental mirror up to your own consciousness. And it doesn't stop there. You can think about your thinking about thinking. You can create an infinite loop of reflection. Philosophers call this higher-order thought, and it's uniquely human, or at least uniquely complex in humans. Here's the crazy part. You can imagine a thought reflecting on another thought, reflecting on another thought, and theoretically, this could go on infinitely. That's a glimpse of infinite self-awareness. Now, finite human minds can only handle a few layers at a time, but the concept itself, the very idea of reflecting infinitely, points to a mind that is limitless. Let me give you a visual. Imagine two mirrors facing each other. You see reflections bouncing back and forth, repeating into infinity. Your mind can do something similar internally. You can reflect, analyze, and think recursively. But while your reflections are finite, the concept of infinite reflection requires an actual infinite mind, one that doesn't get tired, confused, or limited by time or space. Logic starts to kick in here. If finite self-awareness exists, then the very possibility of infinite self-awareness implies an ultimate, unbounded consciousness. Think of it as the completion of self-reflection. Humans are like small mirrors reflecting part of reality. But the ultimate mirror, the one that can reflect all things perfectly and infinitely, is God. Ask yourself, if consciousness exists in us, and if we can reflect on ourselves, doesn't it make sense that there is a supreme mind capable of ultimate self-awareness? Finite beings can only go so far, but infinite reflection can only exist in a mind that is itself infinite. That mind contains all self-awareness, all thought, and all understanding. That mind is God. Even more fascinating, this isn't just abstract philosophy. Every time you pause to wonder about your own awareness or ask, why am I thinking this, you're catching a glimpse of infinity. Your thoughts are echoes of an ultimate reflective consciousness. Logic suggests that the very structure of consciousness, its ability to reflect on itself, points to an infinite mind that contains all knowledge and awareness. That's God. So next time you marvel at your own thoughts, your own ability to introspect, or the way you can step outside yourself and observe your mental processes, remember this. Self-awareness isn't just a human trick, it's a pointer to something greater. It hints at an infinite reflective mind, a consciousness without bounds, a being capable of understanding itself completely, God. In other words, the very fact that you can reflect, think about yourself, and imagine layers of thought suggests something beyond the human. Logic, introspection, and the concept of infinity converge here. Humans are finite mirrors, but the ultimate mind, the one capable of perfect, infinite self-awareness, is God. Every thought, every reflection, every aha moment you have is a shadow, a small reflection of that infinite consciousness. And when you truly grasp this, it's awe-inspiring. Your own mind is pointing to a mind beyond all minds, the ultimate, infinite, self-aware source. That is God, revealed through the logic of consciousness and infinity.
Ever notice that your thoughts aren't just random sparks? They're about something. It's a strange idea if you think about it. When you think about a tree, remember a childhood moment, or even imagine an alien planet, your thoughts aren't floating in a vacuum. They're directed at something. Philosophers call this property intentionality, the fact that mental states are about objects, ideas, or experiences. Your thoughts are never just raw energy or neurons firing. They are about something. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Physics and chemistry can describe particles, energy, and forces in amazing detail. They can tell you exactly how neurons fire, how synapses transmit signals, or how the brain consumes glucose. But physics doesn't tell you why a pattern of electrical pulses means apple or means love. How does matter by itself generate meaning? How does a bunch of atoms come together and refer to things in the world or imagine things that don't exist yet? That's the puzzle of intentionality. Think about a computer. It stores bits, zeros and ones. The bits are meaningless on their own. Only when a programmer assigns meaning to them do they convey information. Your brain is far more complex, but the principle is the same. Mere physical processes can't automatically generate aboutness or meaning. Something more is required, a mind that understands and assigns significance. Here's where logic starts pointing upward. If your thoughts are inherently about things, then the source of that directedness cannot be purely material. There must be a conscious source capable of producing meaning, a mind that can create intentionality, that can ensure thoughts refer to objects, ideas, and concepts in a coherent way. That source, the ultimate mind behind all meaning, is what we call God. Ask yourself, could random molecules bouncing around really explain why you can think about your own thoughts, plan for the future, or imagine worlds that don't exist yet? Could chemical reactions alone produce meaningful directed mental states? It's hard to see how. Logic and observation push us toward a conscious source that generates meaning, a mind capable of giving rise to intentionality itself. That mind is God. Even more fascinating, intentionality isn't just in humans. When animals anticipate, solve problems, or respond to their environment in directed ways, it hints at awareness woven into the fabric of life. But the very concept of meaning and directedness at its deepest level points to a universal mind that sustains all intentionality. God is the ultimate conscious source that grounds the aboutness of all thought. So, next time you reflect, plan, or imagine, remember this. Your thoughts are more than chemical reactions. They have direction, purpose, and meaning. They are pointing outward, beyond mere physics, toward a greater conscious source. Logic suggests that every directed thought is a clue to God, the mind capable of ultimate intentionality. In other words, the fact that our thoughts are about things, the world, and even ourselves, hints at a source beyond matter. Your mind, with all its directedness, awareness, and meaning, reflects a higher consciousness, a mind that grounds all intentionality. That mind is God. When you meditate, dream, or ponder the universe, remember, each directed thought is a pointer to something greater. Meaning exists, awareness exists, and logic points to a conscious source that transcends the physical, a mind beyond all minds. That is God.
Is stealing always wrong? Or does it only depend on your culture, your feelings, or the law? Think about it for a second. We all have this sense that some things are just wrong, no matter what anyone says. Torturing an innocent child for fun? Almost everyone agrees that's immoral. Lying to manipulate someone feels wrong. These aren't just social conventions or personal opinions. They feel like objective truths. Philosophers call this moral realism, the idea that some moral truths exist independently of human belief, society, or law. They are out there, waiting to be recognized, not invented. Now here's the puzzle. Science, physics, and chemistry do a phenomenal job explaining how the universe works. The planets, atoms, energy, even life itself. But they don't tell you why something is right or wrong. Matter alone, neurons, chemicals, and particles, cannot create a standard for good or evil. You can describe what people do, but you cannot derive the ought from the is. This is known as the problem of grounding morality. Think of it this way. Mathematical truths exist whether or not humans know them. 2 plus 2 equals 4, regardless of opinion. Moral truths seem similar. Torturing the innocent isn't right because a culture says so. It's wrong because it violates a universal, objective standard. The question is, where does this standard come from? Logic gives us a strong answer. If moral truths are objective, they cannot arise from purely physical processes. There must be a source outside the universe, a transcendent mind that grounds morality, defines right and wrong, and holds the universe accountable to ethical standards. That mind, the ultimate standard-bearer of moral truth, is what we call God. Ask yourself, could a universe made solely of atoms, forces, and chance truly explain why something is morally right or wrong? Could randomness or evolution fully account for the sense that torturing the innocent is universally wrong? It's hard to see how. Logic nudges us toward the existence of a conscious, moral source, a mind that transcends the physical and provides the foundation for objective morality. Even more, consider how we feel guilt, empathy, or moral duty.
These aren't just survival instincts. They point toward an awareness of something higher. The fact that we can recognize moral truths, debate them, and feel responsible for them hints at a transcendent source who authored these truths. That source is God, the mind behind objective morality. So when you feel the pull of what's right or wrong, remember that inner compass isn't just random chemicals firing in your brain. It's a reflection of a higher, transcendent consciousness that establishes the rules of good and evil. Logic, reflection, and moral experience all converge here. Moral realism doesn't just suggest a universal standard, it points to the existence of God, the ultimate mind who grounds morality itself. In other words, every time you wrestle with questions of right and wrong, recognize that you are touching something beyond yourself, a universal truth source, a standard beyond matter, a mind that transcends space and time. That mind, the origin of objective moral truth, is God. When you look at moral laws not as social constructs, but as real, binding truths, it becomes clear. Our sense of right and wrong is a clue pointing to something greater. A conscious, transcendent mind behind the universe, establishing what is truly right and wrong. That mind is God.
Free will and determinism. Are you really free to make choices? Or is everything already determined? This is one of the oldest puzzles humans have faced. The paradox of free will versus determinism. On one hand, science and logic show that the universe follows laws. Physics, chemistry, biology, all cause and effect. Every event seems linked to a prior event. On the other hand, you experience yourself making choices every single day. You decide what to eat, what to believe, how to act. It feels real, right? That's the paradox. If determinism is true, then in theory, everything you do was already determined by the chain of prior events. Your choices are not really yours. They're inevitable outcomes of past states of the universe. But if free will is real, then your mind can somehow act outside the rigid chain of cause and effect. Which is it? Logic tells us there's a tension here. Something is missing if we try to explain free will purely through physics. Think about it like a computer. A computer runs a program perfectly. Every output is determined by the code and the input. But imagine a player inside the system who can override the program, make choices that the code alone cannot produce. Free will seems to require that higher-order player. You and I feel that higher-order presence in our minds. We can reflect, pause, choose differently. And here's where logic nudges us toward something profound. The very paradox of free will implies the existence of a higher-order mind capable of both sustaining universal order and allowing genuine freedom. In other words, for free will to exist in a universe governed by cause and effect, there must be a source beyond the universe itself, a conscious mind that underlies both laws and liberty. That mind is God. Ask yourself,
If your choices are truly free, where does that freedom come from? And if they're determined, why do we even experience moral responsibility, reflection, and deliberation? The tension between freedom and determinism can't be resolved solely within matter. It hints toward a higher-order consciousness that creates and maintains both order and possibility. That mind is God. Even more fascinating, consider how humans debate morality, plan the future, and even question their own decisions. None of this makes sense if we are only products of physical determinism. Yet our experience of choice is undeniable. The only logical explanation that unites these truths, order in the universe, and genuine free will, is a mind capable of holding both, the ultimate chooser, the source of freedom and law. That mind is God. So every choice you make, every moral decision you ponder, every moment you reflect on what you truly want, is a hint towards something greater. Your capacity for free will, combined with the structured order of the universe, points to a higher mind orchestrating it all, a mind that allows freedom yet sustains reality. That mind is God. In other words, the paradox of free will versus determinism isn't just a philosophical puzzle, it's a clue. It's a clue that human consciousness, choice, and morality exist within a framework created by a conscious source beyond the universe. That ultimate source, capable of infinite foresight, infinite understanding, and ultimate freedom, is God. Next time you hesitate before a decision, reflect on your choices, or feel responsible for your actions, remember, that very experience is a window into the mind behind all minds, a mind that gives you freedom within order. That mind is God.
Phenomenal unity of consciousness. Have you ever wondered how all your thoughts, sights, sounds, and feelings come together into a single you? It's a question most people never think about, but it's one of the most profound puzzles in philosophy and science. Every moment, your mind integrates billions of neurons firing independently. Yet somehow, your experience feels unified. You don't perceive the world as fragmented into separate little consciousnesses. You experience it all as one seamless self. This phenomenon is called the phenomenal unity of consciousness. Think about your morning. You hear birds, smell coffee, remember a dream, and feel excitement about your day. Your vision, hearing, memory, and emotions all blend together into a coherent sense of you experiencing the world. The puzzle is, how does a messy collection of physical neurons, each firing in its own way, produce a single, unified, conscious experience? How does billions of independent signals become one coherent observer? Material processes alone don't seem to fully explain this seamless integration. Let's use a metaphor. Imagine an orchestra with thousands of musicians, each playing independently, without sheet music, without a conductor. Random sounds would emerge, but no symphony. Yet your consciousness is like a perfectly synchronized symphony, integrating all inputs, all thoughts, all feelings into a coherent experience. Something must be orchestrating this unity. Logic steps in here. The unity of consciousness, the fact that there is a single you perceiving everything, suggests a framework beyond mere physical chaos. Something capable of organizing the countless components of awareness into a coherent whole. That intelligence, that ultimate orchestrator, is God. Ask yourself, could billions of neurons, firing randomly, obeying only physical laws, really explain the seamless you that experiences life? Could chemical reactions alone produce coherent awareness, reflection, and integrated perception? It seems unlikely. Logic points toward a divine framework, a mind that provides the structure and organization behind consciousness. Even more, consider this. Every reflection, every self-aware thought, every moment you feel like a singular self is a glimpse of something beyond you. It's a hint that consciousness doesn't arise purely from chaos, but from a mind capable of orchestrating unity across vast complexity. That mind is God. In other words, the very fact that your consciousness feels unified, integrated, and coherent points beyond physics. It hints at a conscious architect orchestrating experience at the highest level. Logic, reflection, and self-awareness converge here. The unity of consciousness is a clue to God, the ultimate orchestrator of awareness itself. Next time you marvel at the seamlessness of your experience, remember, billions of tiny signals in your brain come together as one, and that unity is a window into a mind beyond the universe. A divine framework. That mind is God.
Cognitive fine-tuning. Have you ever wondered why our brains are capable of figuring out the universe at all? Think about it. Humans don't just survive. We understand. We study atoms, stars, galaxies, even the origins of the universe. We can predict eclipses, split the atom, send satellites across space, and even peer into the subatomic world. Our brains aren't merely survival machines. They are astonishingly suited to grasp the structure of reality itself. Philosophers and scientists call this phenomenon cognitive fine-tuning. Now, here's what's mind-blowing. Evolution explains survival advantages. Brains evolved to help us find food, avoid danger, and reproduce. But understanding the deep laws of physics or creating abstract mathematics isn't required for survival. Yet here we are, capable of decoding the universe. Our cognition is precisely tuned to match the structure of reality, far beyond the minimal requirements to survive. Imagine a tiny robot designed to collect food in a garden.
Now, imagine that same robot suddenly capable of mapping an entire galaxy. That's what our minds are doing. Somehow, human cognition aligns perfectly with the rules of the universe, allowing us to comprehend it. And the odds of that happening purely by chance, given evolution's survival focus, seem astonishingly slim. Logic steps in here. The precise alignment between human cognitive abilities and the universe's laws suggests design. There's a remarkable fit between the structure of reality and the way our minds can understand it. It's as if the universe knew we'd be here to make sense of it, or our minds were intentionally crafted to decode it. Either way, the simplest explanation is a conscious designer, a mind capable of building intelligence that mirrors the structure of reality. That mind is God. Ask yourself, could a random process, even over billions of years, produce minds that don't just survive, but also fully comprehend the cosmos? Could blind chance alone explain why humans can understand quantum mechanics, the patterns in biology, the harmony in mathematics, and the evolution of stars? It seems far more logical to think that human cognition was intentionally aligned with the universe. Even more, every discovery you make, every insight that clicks, every aha moment in science, math, or philosophy is your mind tuning into the structure of reality. That alignment isn't just coincidence, it's a reflection of a higher-order mind that designed cognition to connect with reality. That mind is God. So, the next time you marvel at a mathematical pattern, understand a law of nature, or simply have a sudden insight, remember, your ability to comprehend the universe isn't just your brain at work. It's a window into the design of intelligence itself. Human cognition is fine-tuned, and logic points to a designer, a conscious mind capable of aligning thought with reality. That mind is God. In other words, every spark of understanding, every moment of insight, and every discovery is evidence that your brain is more than a survival tool. It's part of a divine design, a mind behind the mind, a blueprint for comprehension. That mind, the ultimate architect of human understanding and the universe itself, is God.